operations.
for commercial purposes.
Yes.
So, I think we're ready to go.
All these years and I've forgotten about the site plan ordinance.
Everyone ready to go?
It's sad.
Thumbs up. Wonderful. Okay. Happy Monday, everybody. Today is Monday, obviously, October 27th, 2025. We are kicking off with a workshop, a joint workshop between the Planning Board and the Comprehensive Plan Committee, looking at LD 1829. Our amazing town planner, Bridget, has put together a very in-depth presentation with visuals, which is exciting. So sort of considering the way our last session went, we thought a little bit more of a direct and concerted effort to go through all of this would be appropriate. We do kind of respectfully ask if everyone can keep their questions until the end so that Bridget can go through all of the different key components. And so we'll do presentation and then Q&A and just general discussion if that gets a thumbs up from everybody. Which I'm hoping it is. I see nodding heads. Okay, cool beans. Bridget, over to you.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to be here and run through this information with you all. My name is Bridget Perry. I'm the Director of Planning and Sustainability for the town. And I've been researching LD 1829 for a bit. Figure out what I'm doing here. There we go. We're going to look at that, but we're also going to cover some of the recent legislation. So it's not just LD 1829 that has an impact on our ordinances. There are a couple other ones, at least from the planning and land use side, that we should be looking at. We'll run through LD 1829, the growth management aspect, the affordable housing piece, the lot and density requirements, and then what does that look like in Cumberland. So we'll run through a couple different scenarios. And then we'll talk about what's next, and then we can answer questions and have discussion about what we think is going to happen. So the first one I just want to touch on is LD 427, which basically says that in a growth area, we are only allowed to require one off-street parking space. So our current chapter says that we need 2.5 per dwelling unit, 2.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. So we will have to go through and revise that ordinance. Pretty simple one. LD 997 is effective July 1st, 2027, so year after 1829. And it says that municipalities are required to allow residential uses in any zoning district that currently allows commercial uses. So there are a couple items that are in our control that we can manage in the ordinances through ordinance changes. The number of residential units, the first floor usage of a space. So if you think of maybe a multi-use building, first floor spaces could be designated as only commercial, where upstairs spaces could be designated residential, something like that. And then siting and design standards for the properties. This will impact several of our zoning districts, not a top priority at the moment, but just to be aware of. All right, and here's the big one that everyone really came for. LD 1829 is an act to build housing for Maine families and attract workers to Maine businesses by amending laws governing housing density. It really aims to increase density by mandating permissive zoning in growth areas, in designated growth areas, or in areas served by water or sewer. There's several different components of LD 1829. Some of them have different effective dates. Some pieces are already in place at the state level, are already state law. They're not implemented yet in our code. We must follow them. Detour, before we go further, I must take you into what is a growth area. So growth areas are designated by our comprehensive plan. So in 2014, we would have just designated these 3 growth areas that you're seeing on your screen. They are suitable for orderly residential, commercial, or industrial development, and is where most development is projected to happen over the next 10 years. Okay, so for us, right now, these are existing growth areas along the Route 100 corridor, the Route 1 corridor, and in this town center. We're in a comprehensive planning process right now, which is an opportunity, I think, but we'll touch on that later.
I can't.
So good.
It's so good.
All right, so let's get back to it now that we know what growth area is and where they are in town. Effective September 24th of this year, so already in place, fire suppression sprinklers in ADUs are no longer required. The state has also amended the definition of ADU. The largest piece of it is adding a multi-unit structure. So you're allowed to have an ADU on a multi-unit structure. So a duplex, one of those plexes, one of those dwelling units is now allowed to have an ADU. And then it also requires training for planning board members, which it's unclear how that has to happen, but we don't do that in-house, generally speaking. We always offer training to our planning board members through MMA, so they have a planning board and boards of appeals training that I think accomplishes the mission of the law, the new law. So now looking at effective July 1, 2026, the growth management piece of LD 1829 prohibits the town from implementing any rate of growth ordinances within that growth area. Okay, so for us, where are we right now? We have a whole chapter in our zoning, in our code book about growth management. New dwelling units are required to obtain a growth permit, and we cap growth permits at 65 per year. We give an extra allowance for affordable units and add 7 more to that. There are some exceptions, including age-restricted housing and contract zones. So contract zones over a particular parcel may allow for greater density in some areas. But generally speaking, we have this cap in place. So we would need to go through Chapter 118 and review that for compliance with this new state rule. Also effective July 1st, 2026, are a couple of things that affect with affordable housing. Developments are allowed to exceed local height restrictions by 1 story or 14 feet. So right now, most of Cumberland is restricted to 40 feet tall, which is about 3 to 4 stories, 3.5 stories maybe. In all zoning districts, and some contract zones have greater allowances. So down, the one that I can think of, for example, is Cumberland Fourside Village has a 50-foot height restriction on their contract zone. So there you'd be able to go to 64 feet if it was an affordable housing development by this state law. So we do need to look at Chapter 315-52 and consider this for Cumberland. Also with affordable housing, and this is not new, this was just sort of restated, reiterated, reinforced with LD 1829, is that affordable housing developments are allowed to have at least 2.5 times the base density otherwise allowed. Where are we? I mean, that's a lot. Right? And once we start looking at some of these other implications to LD 1829, it could be even more. I've put a little bit of an example here. Cumberland's average household size is 2.8 people, so rounded up to 3, where our zoning generally set, we allow 4 units in a 40-foot tall building. We've got 12 people in there. If that's an affordable unit by the state definition of affordability, that could then mean, what is that, 10 units and 30 people. So again, we're going to have to look at the code and revise for the state allowances. All right, effective again on July 1st, 2026. The new LD 1829 says that we are to allow at least 4 dwelling units in residential growth areas or on sewer and water. Anywhere outside of a growth area or off of sewer and water, we have to allow 3 dwelling units per lot. What does that look like right now? Our current ordinance allows 1 ADU per residential lot, and sometimes we allow a second dwelling unit to be constructed. It just depends on the size of the lot. Something really important to note is that the Tuttle Road corridor is served by public sewer and water, and it is outside a growth area. So with this in mind, we would allow at least 4 units on each lot along that Tuttle Road corridor. To allow this, the state law also increased the trigger for subdivision review by the planning board from 3 units to 5. So where you had, if you wanted to put, say, turn your house into 4 apartments, you had to go to the planning board to get that reviewed under subdivision law. Now you don't have to. Now by right, you can divide that into 4 units. The division of land into 3 or more parcels still remains under planning board review. Okay, now lot and density requirements under 1829. If you remember last time, we kind of used a board to sketch this out as we were all trying to figure it out. So I have put this out here for us in a table format. We've got X's and check marks. So we have no public sewer, no public water. It's not in a growth area. The maximum lot size is directed by the town. So its underlying zoning would apply to those parcels that fall outside of the growth area without access to public sewer or water. The density requirement, this is a little bit unclear because the law allows 4 units per lot. So I don't know, quite frankly, what that is going to mean for us. So right now, our underlying zoning probably doesn't really apply where it comes to dwelling units and density. It most likely will be 4 per lot. 4 dwellings can be on 1 lot. Let's see, off of public sewer, off of public water, but still in a growth area. We have a 20,000 square foot maximum lot size. The town cannot require a lot size any larger than that in a growth area off of sewer and water. 1 acre is about 43,000 square feet. So that's about a half an acre. And then the density requirement, there's 3 dwelling units. I misspoke earlier. So the up at the top here, I should use the mouse. 3 dwelling units is the maximum because we're off of sewer and off of water. Sorry. See, it's all still confusing. Okay. And then we get to, we're increasing density as we're going through this table. We get to public sewer, public water, outside of a growth area. So this would be that Tuttle Road corridor that I mentioned, and we're going to look at that in a minute. We have 5,000 square foot is the maximum lot size that we're allowed to impose. And a density requirement is 2,500 square feet for the first 2 dwelling units and 5,000 square feet after that. Again, it's really unclear if the 5,000 square feet after that, we can establish it and then put 4 dwelling units on it because we're on sewer and water. So it could actually look more dense than that. And then again, the most dense here is public sewer, public water, and inside a growth area. 5,000 square foot maximum lot size with the first 4 units being allowed on that first 5,000 square foot lot. In my communications so far with the town attorney, and with MOCA, the Maine Office of Community Affairs, it does appear that they will apply the previous provision and allow 3 dwelling units to be built without public sewer and water, and 4 dwelling units to be built on a lot, any lot, with public sewer and water. Can I ask you to write it down and we can come back to it, Bob?
Bridget, I'm unclear on one thing here, and I'm not sure that the state articulates it well. Are we suggesting that somebody is going to break out a 1,250 square foot lot and register it, meets and bounds, and sell it as a buildable lot? Or is it the intention that somebody with a half an acre is going to break it into 4 lots, retain ownership, and create affordable housing or market-based housing? I'm just a little unclear as to whether people are going to take that small piece of land and break it out and define it as a lot and sell it on the open market.
Yes, I don't think you can have a lot that is 1,200 square feet. So the maximum lot size it's 5,000 square feet. So on that 5,000 square feet, we can then have 4 dwelling units,
But not necessarily sell,
not subdivide it.
not subdivided.
Right.
You can have the dwelling units, but the land is retained by somebody.
Sure, you could have a condo association, or it could be rental units, something like that. I think.
So when we get
but-
down to the 50 feet by 135 feet, we're talking the same thing.
Okay. All right, so where are we? I don't know. I'm emoji, I guess. I can't put into words where we are, right, with learning this information. We're shocked, we're confused, we don't know what's going on. What does this mean? We're like, oh, okay. So actions for me was let's be thoughtful about this. Let's see what really matters, and let's map it, because I'm a map person. I'm a spatial thinker. I go to the what is this going to look like? So that's just what I did. So you have this in your packet. It's online. The growth areas are in bold here, bolded outlines, and we just look at the three growth areas, and we've got the 4 different development scenarios. I call the red here the high density in a growth area, so that's in sewer, with sewer and water, the 5,000 square feet per lot. The first 4 dwelling units can be on 1 lot of 5,000 square feet. High density outside the growth area, so this is mostly the Tuttle Road corridor, but it's also a little bit down here on Longwoods, Route 9. You can see they've got access to sewer here. And then the low density is in this sort of beige-ish color. Those are their 20,000 square foot lots. And then everything else, as far as we can tell right now, will remain in our regular zoning, RR1 and RR2, or whatever that ends up looking like. Also, I'm gonna go back to this real quick. Also in your packet, and in my memo, I've attached 3 additional maps, which I don't have on this, but it shows these growth areas zoomed in, and it shows some of the land that's sort of in existing use. So where's the school? Where are permanently conserved lands? Where are town-owned lands, whether they're permanently conserved or not? So it kind of takes some of the parcels out of the picture for development, and gives you maybe a better picture of what's actually out there. All right, so now I want to take you through a few development scenarios, which goes through the lot density requirements and our current ordinances. My assumptions are that these are like perfectly buildable lots, clear, flat, ready to go, and I'm going to go for maximum density. However, I do not consider affordable housing under that maximum density. Just keep that in mind when we go through that. And then my disclaimer is that this is subject to change. We expect rulemaking to come out in January One of the documents that I provided in your packet is the draft rulemaking that came out from MoCA that is open for comment until Friday. So I plan to comment. I have a couple items that I want to comment on that draft rulemaking, the things that are still unclear. But if there's anything else that you've seen as we go through this that you want to add to the list, I will comment on behalf of the town by the end of the week. And we do expect amended legislation. As we heard earlier, there's some typos, there's some things, so I think that we'll see amended legislation. Nothing that I have seen, read, heard changes the date, changes the effective date. But I don't know, right? There's a lot we don't know. Also, I'm not an attorney, so. Okay, so low density in a growth area. So the title of the slide is the same color as the area on the map that we're looking at. All right, so this is the beige area. Our maximum lot size is 20,000 square feet. We take a 15-acre lot, which is 600 some odd thousand square feet. 20,000, divide that by 20,000 square feet per lot. We get about 32 lots or dwelling units. So someone could take the 15-acre parcel and put 32 apartments in there, or 32 condos or something like that. So we're kind of using lots and dwelling units interchangeably here. So what does that look like? We've got 32 lots on 15 acres. I don't know what that's gonna look like. But here's a guess. You've got smallish, medium-sized lots with some, regular-looking houses. Example lot dimensions is 125 feet by 160 feet for a lot. But wait. What happens when this lot is in R1 or RR2 zoning districts? We have conservation subdivision as the preferred subdivision in Cumberland, which means that anyone coming before the planning board with a subdivision in RR1 or RR2 must submit a conservation subdivision plan. Doesn't necessarily have to be the one that the planning board moves forward with, but it is right now the preferred development style for subdivisions in Cumberland. So conservation subdivision requires that 50% of the parcel is left in open space. So from everything that I can read in the state law and in our ordinances, basically what that does is takes the lot size from 20,000 to 10,000 square feet. Okay, so we're clustering all the development on one side of the parcel. On the 15-acre parcel, we have 7.5 acres left. We're still getting the 32 dwelling units. Our ordinance states that state law wouldn't allow any less. So we just get smaller lot sizes. 75 by 136, I don't know, for examples. Whatever that looks like. So you're getting smaller lots, probably smaller houses, I can't say, in a tighter formation on the land. Okay, we're going to move to high density outside of growth area. So this is the orange. This is that Tuttle Road corridor. We've got 5,000 square feet for each dwelling unit. So we've got 15 acres. We're looking at about 131 lots or dwelling units. All of these lots are in R1 or R2. So conservation subdivision may apply. Again, that's up to the planning board. We're taking 50% of that parcel, putting that into open space. We're going to get less than 2,500 square foot lots. Or more than likely to get that density, we're looking at townhouses, apartment buildings, or condos. I had some fun with some clip art, so hope you don't mind that. But then I found some other pictures that might be, more suiting. We've got 45 units in this building right here in the mark. Okay. And then we're gonna just keep going up in density. We're gonna look at high density in the growth area. I've got two examples of this. One, I'm gonna keep using the same 15-acre parcel. We have 5,000 square foot lots, 133 lots or dwelling units. Few of these, because of where they are, this is the red, are in RR1 or R2. So conservation subdivision will rarely apply. So we've got that whole 15-acre parcel. We are not saving any of it for conservation, although you're gonna have green space, right? So you get, in this situation, I'm just, projecting or giving you a scenario where you get more mixed development. You get single-family homes on pretty small lots. You get some townhouse style, some apartment style, condo style developments going on here. And then what I'm saying is more likely to happen is a 1-acre lot with this high growth, this high density in a growth area. So this is my sort of second example to take you through what this might look like. We have more 1-acre lots available in these growth areas that are highlighted in the red area on the map. Okay, so this is more accessible to someone who might want to develop. I remember going back, if we're looking at an affordable unit, if we're looking at affordable development, 51% of the development must be designated affordable for the long term, so 30 years. Must be deed restricted, covenant restricted. Some restriction has to be in place to call it affordable. And we can talk about that if you want the state definitions of affordable when we get into a discussion. 2.5 times the density. Okay, so if we're looking at this, if we're maxing out acreage and we're maxing out density in here, we're talking about 300 plus units. Okay. That's just something to keep in mind. Let's run through this high density in a growth area. Example 2. We could have a 1-acre parcel sitting out there in what right now is LDR, low density residential, over here in the east side of Cumberland, or in the central side of, I should use the mouse, or in the central part of Cumberland. It's more likely that we'll have 1 acre that's available to be developed. So we still have the 5,000 square feet. That's 8 lots. Well, sorry, that's 11 lots when we take in the sort of density bonus for the first 5,000 square foot lot. So we're looking at 11 lots or 11 dwelling units on 1 acre, which could look like Village Way in Cumberland, plus 3 to 5 more units. So we have something kind of similar to this right now. So Village Way, I think, has 6 units. Is Lee here? No. Yeah, that's right. Has 6 units, so now we'd get 5 more units. We would have to allow 5 more units to go into like a 1-acre lot, like the Village Way lot. And this is a picture of the Village Way units. They're duplexes, attached units. All right, so where do we go from here? This is where I have a little bit of freedom. I think that we lead by example, that we be agents of change, and we recognize that this is coming from the state in one way or another. There's not, I'll just say, I think that we don't need to waste our time or energy resisting this. Or I would hate to see us go down the road of resistance and spending so much time trying to fight this when it's the state saying this is how it's going to be. So I'm a big believer in just basing my thinking on reality, and what we know for sure. And I think that this is really an opportunity for us to just walk into it, learn more about it, figure out what it means for Cumberland, address it through the comprehensive plan if we need to, start looking at our ordinances, consider what's in our control. We're still allowed to look at setbacks, lot frontage, design standards. We can consider implementing some of the changes now. Some are already in state law, so we might as well look at our ordinances and just get them up to date, start going. I'd also like to recommend that we pilot zone changes in one zoning district, and I'm suggesting Office Commercial South. It's a small one, and we all know that we've gotten a developer who is looking at a parcel in a district that's almost fully built out. And then we've got the comprehensive plan. So we're moving through the comprehensive plan now. We're learning what our residents want to see, where our residents want to see housing and commercial development, what kinds of housing and commercial development we want to have in Cumberland. And it's a good opportunity to look at those growth areas and make a recommendation if they need to change, if they need to shrink, if they need to expand. We are required by state law to designate growth areas. So before you ask that question, no, we cannot eliminate our growth areas altogether. We can also designate transition areas. So if I can go back here, instead of having really high density lines up against 4-acre zoning, we could transition. We could do sort of a softer, we're gonna do one acre zoning into 2-acre zoning and have it, look a little bit more, instead of a hard stop at really high density apartment complexes into farmland and very rural character, we could do a transition area. So those are all sort of mechanisms that the town, levers that the town can pull through comprehensive planning. So those are my thoughts on what we do next. And I've actually teed up some ordinance changes that the planning board will see at their next meeting in November. Now, let me have it. What do you got? We have a microphone, Peter.
Let's see, or yeah, just Pete, if you don't mind, Mr. Bingham, just into the mic so that people at home can hear your question.
You don't have a portable microphone?
I think she's got one right there.
So, I guess it's, yeah, here we go. So, RR2, 2-acre minimum now under our ordinance. Again, no sewer, no water, RR area. For a 10-acre lot in the 2-acre, how many dwelling units can you put on that?
Right now?
No, not now, under this new ordinance.
Well, a 10-acre lot could be divided right now, so it won't affect what currently exists.
Even though...
Are you on sewer? Are you adding sewer to the equation?
No,
Okay.
this is just RR area with no sewer right now. So the 20,000 square foot does not apply?
As far as we know right now, the 20,000 square feet only applies off of sewer and water in a growth area. So within these bold lines, just the beige. It's not clear if that's what they intended to do, but that is how it's clearly stated in at least the rulemaking that was attached in the packet. It is, we are allowed to impose like higher lot sizes outside of the growth area, off of sewer and water. Sewer is really like the key thing. If we eliminated all of our growth zones, we would still have sewer in a lot of the town, and these laws would still be subject. We would still be subject to these laws.
So RR1 and RR2 areas are basically the same rules going forward as they are now.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
as far as we can tell. Subject to change.
Bridget, I have a general question, and just for purposes of my question, I'm sort of clumping together all of the dimensional and density changes of LD 1829. In order for that statute to apply, must the dwellings created or constructed be affordable? Or do these new dimensional and density requirements apply to very expensive housing as well?
They apply to any housing that gets developed. If you want to do affordable housing, you get more units. So if we go, so we would allow 4 dwelling units under this new law in a growth area as is. And we could put 4 giant 5,000 square foot houses on a lot, as far as I can tell. So they don't have to be affordable. There's no affordable requirement there. If we make it affordable, we can increase that density from the 4 to the 10.
In fact, this new law does not promote affordable housing.
I'm not gonna comment on that.
All right, I hear you. I'll do just one more question if I could. Can you switch back to the slide that showed that section of Tuttle Road as a narrow yellow strip? There we are. So my question is, how much land to your left and right, if you are in that strip, is considered to be serviced by public water and sewer? In other words, how deep does the concept of servicing go?
So that is one of my questions I have that I would like to submit feedback on. That is a force main line that runs on Tuttle Road. Our current ordinance says, this is chapter 216, our sewer ordinance, it says that new subdivisions within 500 feet of sewer shall be served by sewer. That means to me, any lot within 500 feet of that Tuttle Road force main must connect to the sewer line. And in that case, we would be looking at high density outside of a growth area, 5,000 square feet lot sizes.
So that portion of a lot which extends further than 500 feet away from the sewer line and the water line is not impacted by the new law?
If your lot, if any part of your lot, how I would interpret it, is if any part of your lot, even if it's the far right corner, whatever, is within that 500 feet, and it's going to be subdivided, at least under our current ordinance, you would have to run the sewer line up to your subdivision. Bill can argue with me too.
Denise?
I have a question, and it has to do with this slide, so I'm glad we're here. This slide mentions ADUs. Is that what we're talking about when we're talking about dwelling units, or was that just a tidbit? Because ADUs fall under separate rules and all that.
Yeah, so this law kind of blurs the line between what is an ADU and what's a dwelling unit. It's hard. It's hard to say. they've eliminated, so in our current ordinance, a dwelling unit would be a whole nother house. You could rent it to, you could sell it as a condo to another person, right? You could condoize your lot, you could sell the one building on your lot to another occupant owner. Another dwelling unit could be constructed, or it could be, your current house could be divided into 2 dwelling units, something like that, into a duplex, and you could have a different tenant. Under old ADU in Cumberland, we said you couldn't occupy, only the owner could occupy an ADU. But now, but now the state is saying you cannot regulate who lives in the ADU. You cannot require an owner-occupied ADU. So anybody could be in it, which is the same as our dwelling unit. So it's really confusing. So under the state law, in a growth area, we can allow 4 dwelling units. What I will say is that density does not count for the first ADU on top of those 4 dwelling units. Meaning, if you have a 1-acre lot, you build 4 houses on it, one of those houses gets an ADU, no questions asked. Doesn't impact density. So that's 5 units, dwelling units, that can be on that lot without consideration to density.
Follow-up question. Say that it's a condo development. For the purposes of ADUs, are those classified as residences to where each one of those could have their own ADU in addition?
Yes.
Okay. And I think they're doing that. I think there's some developments now that are condo developments, and you get an ADU with
You
it.
get
You can
an
rent it
ADU.
out, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. So is that updated as part of this, or is that already in existence and it's just tweaked with
It's
1829?
been revised. Okay, LD 2003, my advisor, is telling me that it gave an ADU to each residential. This upped it and changed the definition of ADU.
Okay.
Can we talk a little bit about growth areas? So we have the 3 defined areas currently in town. What is defining a couple things? So by state standards, is there a minimum amount of like square footage? Is that regulated at all by the state?
No,
So you just have to have a growth area, like it could be 1 acre.
as far as I can tell, yes. What regulates this is the comprehensive planning process.
Okay, so that's like our kind of like regulation of that. As far as from a town perspective, are we, like, I'm assuming we got to these places, safe to assume, by potential commercial growth or existing commercial growth. Has there ever been, or is there conversation in the comprehensive plan about just like available space being a growth area, or is it always just centered around commercial development? Like, what is defining what's considered a growth area? Are you following me?
Kind of. So by state law, it is a designated space where most of the growth will happen in the town
Okay.
for the next 10 years. So we haven't had an in-depth conversation about it yet at the comprehensive planning level. We're still doing these public workshops and trying to get input from folks. And so with those public workshops, we've got maps that say, here's a map of Cumberland.
Yep.
Where do you want growth? Put a green sticker where you want growth.
Okay.
Right on your sticker, is that a grocery store? Is that an apartment complex? And then red stickers, we don't want any growth here.
Okay.
So I think if I'm allowed to sort of go out on a limb and say the open space areas people don't really want growth, aren't pinpointing for growth, and some of the areas where you would expect, people are saying, yes, we want growth there. The Route 1 corridor, the Route 100 corridor. Some actually down, which we have a little bit down on Longwoods and Route 9. We want some growth down there, so
Okay.
we'll sort of see what comes out of comp plan.
And then one other question, environmental sensitivities would be things like shoreland zoning, right?
Right.
Okay. The land division regulation that currently needs to go before the planning board, is that from the state or is that from the town? So like if someone has a lot and they want to subdivide it and they need to go to the planning board, is that coming from our town regulations or is that state regulated?
That's state regulated.
Okay. And then, conservation subdivision. Just curious on this one. Why is that such a wishy-washy thing? I feel like we're either in or we're out on that. It seems like it's kind of left for interpretation, and I feel like if we're not really in on it, why is that even a requirement to make a developer come to the table with that? It seems like a waste of resources. Or are we all the way in or out? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, why are we so wishy-washy on
Our
that?
ordinances are not clearly in or out on it.
Yeah.
And the history of that, I don't know.
Is that something we should be defining more deeply, especially as we have these growth conversations? It seems, go ahead.
Based on my creeping on the planning board meetings, I sort of remember a conversation about how it needs to be provided, but and that's the preferred
Yeah.
method, unless the site is whack and there's no really good way to do it, or there's only some places you can build or something. I don't know. But the intent is that if is viable, that's the path. And I'm sure Peter can elaborate, but
It just kind of seems like something we should define a little bit more deeply. I don't know why in the sense of if as the lot sizes get smaller and there's less parameters surrounding this, it seems like people would just come to the table and say, well, we can't do it, right? So I don't know. It seems like we should take a stronger stance on it is my take, but
And I think too, if you look at this first example, we've got 32 lots times 2.5 if this isn't affordable.
yeah.
You're looking at 2 or 3 big buildings on 7 acres.
Yeah, and my preference would be to take a hard stance on it because I think it's a good way to manage growth. And I think knowing what I've heard from people, space preservation is important to them. So this seems like an easy way to say, if you can't do it, we're not doing it kind of thing. But that's just a thought. And then land division. The 65 permits, I think I know the answer to this, but are those being exhausted every year? Or are we not meeting, or are they not, 65 permits on average not being pulled? Never reached. Good job, Peter.
And if we have, they've been under contract. So Bill, you can come on.
Okay.
Bill Longley, Code Officer. I administer those growth permits, and originally it was set up that there was 40 growth permits. Originally it was set up for 4 affordable housing and 4 for the island.
Okay.
We lost the island, we didn't do a lot of affordable, and we had a desire, and we were approaching the 40, so the council raised it to 65. I think the only time, once or twice that we hit the 65 is when we issued the 45 units for the MARC, and we already had 20-something units that year.
Gotcha.
So we went over the 65, but we had 7 to pull from the year before, and we have 7 to go into the following year. So we haven't officially gone over the amounts allowed by the ordinance since we've changed to the 65. So Peter, you're right, even technically we did go over, but we didn't need any council action to make any changes.
55 and over is exempt.
Interesting.
Either contract zone and/or 55 and older. When we did that big condo development down off Route 1, that was 55 and older, so that didn't.
That didn't count, and we've exempted 55 and older. Generally, it is taking care of seniors, but also not putting kids in the school system. So
Okay.
that was the thing. Bridget, what is the size of the acreage still available off Stiles Way? Is it 15, 20 acres, more or less.
Sounds about right. I haven't looked at it in a little bit, but yeah.
So saying it's 20 acres now, with it being in a growth area, also water and sewer, and with affordable density bonuses, how theoretically, how many units could be put on those 20 acres, given any swamps or anything else?
A couple hundred.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Steve? Oh, Jeff did.
This could be a minor point, but just a quick question for Bill. On the, with respect to the council-imposed cap on building permits per year, that applied town-wide and not just to the growth areas. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question and then pivoting over to Denise. So if a developer were to want to expand, can they expand the sewer if they're willing to pay for it?
I think that is really up to the Portland Water District. But yes, I think so.
So-
Bill? Chris?
It's really based on our capacity, but yes, they can expand the sewer.
But there's some kind of process in place for them to go through, and it's not just a, hey, I have the money, I'm about to put this down, right?
And we only have so much capacity allotted to us
Yep.
currently, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but we can't exceed that capacity unless we expand the size of the pump station. But right now, we do have adequate capacity for some growth, so.
And so then they would go to the Portland Water District?
Correct, in conjunction with us and the town of Falmouth, about the pump station and the capacity requirements.
Okay. Denise?
Just part of what Bailey was talking about taking a stronger stance on conservation subdivision. I agree with that. Also, looking at this map, I feel like if you are wanting to build that many units and you are subject to a 50% conservation subdivision, your choice is to build up and not build a bunch of McMansions on lots. And I think it would encourage smaller units to be built in order to make it work for them. So I don't feel like that would be like a real issue if they wanted to make it work. But anyways, I had a question about what you had said, Bridget, earlier when we were talking about growth areas. You said they're residential, commercial, industrial, so it encompasses everything. But now commercial will have to be 50%, residential as well. Does that also apply to the industrial zones as well? Or just
Commercial will have to allow residential. It sort of lets the municipalities put parameters around what that looks like.
Oh, I
So
thought it was 50%.
May, not required.
May go up to 50%, or how does that?
So one of the previous ordinance changes that we did was to allow residential uses in VCC and in OCS. And that, the wording there was 50%.
Maximum residential in a
Yes.
commercial zone was 50%.
Based on
So
square,
has that
based on
changed?
square footage. So for our ordinances, right now, that has not changed, but that's not what the state is saying. The state is saying you have to have some residential allowed anywhere where you have commercial.
But not industrial, because I'm thinking about
They have,
my backyard, obviously, right there. That's all industrial, and there is some residential on it as well, but I'm curious, like, couldn't we also have some housing in the industrial
we
zones as
can.
well?
They haven't said that thou shalt, but they've said that if you wanted to add industrial into that and allow residential use there, they're not gonna say no. So if that's something that we wanna look at doing, we can.
All right, that's enough for me for now.
Connie, did you have a question? I do. Microphone, if you don't mind. Thank you.
I'll make it short because this pertains to RR1 and RR2, and I don't think there's a lot of interest in those zones. But I think I heard you say that conservation subdivisions were not required in RR1 and RR2, and yet Coastal Pines subdivision, which is in RR2, I think, was required to file a conservation subdivision application. And there's nothing rural about what's left, you know, there's no farmland there, they're giant houses on fairly small lots. So I would argue it did not accomplish any goals of preserving farmland. And it probably did accomplish a goal of preserving some fragile areas.
Yep, so the ordinance states that a developer must submit a conservation subdivision plan to the planning board.
In RR1 and RR2?
Yes.
Okay.
With
that's
that in
clear.
mind, they can also submit a traditional subdivision plan. Coastal Pines never came forward with a traditional subdivision plan. So the planning board saw their conservation subdivision plan, which it preserves wetlands and there's a stream back there. And that's the one that they moved forward with. So if that developer or another developer presents two plans, it is then up to the planning board to decide, is it feasible to do a conservation subdivision? Does it make sense? And if the answer is yes, then I think most likely the planning board would move forward with the conservation subdivision. There could be another argument from the developer that we're facing something, I don't know, steep slopes or weirdness, and we can't quite conserve all that, and we need to go traditional route. And that case could be made, but the conservation subdivision plan must be submitted to the planning board.
Okay, then I misheard something earlier, so.
Denise? Me again. Thinking about growth areas, whether or not these stay growth areas or we add more or whatever, and just the town in general, regarding conservation subdivisions, do we have an overlay map or can we make one that shows like the ideal contiguous green space throughout the town, you know, for like wildlife, transportation and whatnot, so that these 50% of parcels are amounting to something and they're not like checkerboard? Like, so that when they do go to the planning board or we are looking at development, you already have in mind where things should be left alone so that things aren't fragmented.
Yes.
Whether it comes, like, whether there's wetlands there or there's some sensitive, like, nesting area or something like that that we might need to know about.
Yes. So I can't remember what it's called, the habitat maps. Yes, beginning with habitat maps. Thank you. They show large tracts of land, of undisturbed land, and I've actually put a map together for the comprehensive plan showing that information. So we do have that. I was trying to pull up our permanently conserved data layers, and it is kind of what you were just describing. It is pretty piecemeal because we do end up with those conservation subdivisions that have, 10, 5, 3 acres of conserved land that is disconnected and disjointed. It's just out there. But yeah, that's easy.
Okay. I was just thinking again, sorry, making it about me, but the little green space behind my backyard up on Middle, it's like our house is on the front, but we do have quite a bit of, little forest back there butting up against the fields, whatever. And there are deer and turkeys and things constantly going through there. So thinking about, like you said too, about transition areas, kind of going from woods to, allowing a little bit more of that green space just so that animals can still do what they're doing rather than be displaced and mess around in people's backyards. So that goes for already existing neighborhoods as well, outside of growth areas, but abutting them, kind of that transition. And with that transition, how does that work exactly? You just make sure that that isn't within a growth area, so then it has lower density? Or is there an actual transitional zoning that exists that you can designate?
We can kind of make it do what we want to do. I keep thinking about like urban growth boundaries, right? And when you put an urban growth boundary in place, you get really high density development, and then like on one side of the street, on the other side of the street, it's nothing. And I don't know if that's what we want. And if that's something that we want, then that's fine, and we can make zoning ordinances around that. I think it's something that the comprehensive plan committee will look at and is looking at seriously with the habitat data, with large tracts of land, what makes sense? And do these lines need to change? With all of that in mind, do we need a transitional area? Maybe we do a transition area, not everywhere against a growth area, but maybe we recommend a transition area in some of the places where maybe it makes a little bit more sense, perhaps along Tuttle Road, because we've got access to, sewer and water there. Maybe we want to see a little more gradual change in the landscape.
I think that's what the developer in the one workshop we had mentioned as well, is on Route 1, like, you have heavy commercial, we're not just gonna go straight to the single family,
Right,
kind of step it
right.
down,
It's
so
really
it's more of a
like abrupt changes, or
smooth, yeah, exactly.
they look weird and they feel weird when you see them in the landscape. We've got small ones as you cross into Yarmouth. You can tell the density changes, right? Like, there's some that are local that we can go to, but nothing that has the potential to impact development like LD 1829.
Thank you.
I have a question, Bridget. In your research and kind of reading up on this, obviously we're talking a lot about aesthetics and what it's going to look like. But the other thing is that there could be the introduction, of course, of more families, and that could also have a major impact on enrollment for the school. And my understanding, and Chris, maybe you can keep me honest on this, but for the town of North Yarmouth, they don't have any sewer.
They don't.
Zero sewer, right? So, which is that. So this means something very different to them, right? And so, has there been any discussion or murmuring around at the state level? Have they thought about kind of that impact on education? I think probably also we're talking about fire, police, kind of the unintended consequences of what this density also does for the other services. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't know. I haven't heard any mumblings around those other services.
Might be good for us to look into that a little bit.
Even
too.
at the state level, like what is,
What's
yeah,
like?
what's the plan?
Maybe that's a Teresa Purse question.
Yeah, I think that's more I think there should be more regulation from the state level too. Like, if you're intending for this to happen, which is fine, like, it is what it is, but then what supports are you gonna put in place from a checks and balance perspective to ensure that, like, services are expanding appropriately? Like, what is the expectation surrounding service, which is something we have to define within our community, but I think that should come from the state level too in some perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like,
They're gonna raise this big check?
Yeah.
This is just feeding into Bob's consolidating and making it like county fire. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what it needs to run into, because it's out of balance in certain places, but we're all
Yeah.
like all fueling this goal of all this housing. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, and we've just approved a school that, is supposed to take in the next 10 years, but
Right.
if the next 10 years have just wildly changed in terms of density, then what is that gonna mean, right?
Yeah, there was a guy out there with his hand up.
Sure, come on up.
Just curious about the on-street parking that it's gonna create. If you only have one car per lot,
Yeah.
you're looking at 300 lots, now we got a bigger problem with the on-street parking because the shoulders aren't big enough in the town. So is that gonna be on the developer, is that on the town? Shouldn't be on the taxpayers. So that's something else we need to think about, as far as I can see. Because if you start stacking 300 cars parked on the side of Tuttle Road, it's gonna be a mess. It's bad enough when they have the farmer's market on Saturday. And that's 20 cars, so just another thing to think about.
Yeah, and the way, can I respond?
Please.
The way that I read that is just that if off-street if on-street parking is available by another means, it can be counted towards the development. So I would say generally, we don't have on-street parking available. So we could make that look like a bigger parking lot for a development or something like that.
That's basically what I was gonna say, is that's for,
Portland.
I'm thinking like, yeah, like a walkable town, you know, where there's a lot of biking and pedestrians. It's like you get one parking space on the street. But for us, since we're more rural, we don't have this like great transportation network or whatnot. It's just like parking lots, and that doesn't apply. That's not on-street parking. That's right down a driveway and it's parking lots.
Correct, yeah, we don't have really on-street parking, do we? No. Couldn't think of a place. Okay.
Bob, were you gonna say something?
I was. A lot of problems have solutions that none of us like. And one of them is county government, county fire, county school systems. You know, we look at the rest of the country and how they conduct themselves, and it's much different than the Northeast, and we all pat ourselves on the back about home rule and, you know, don't let government stray any further than the town line, and we pay the cost. You know, we happily pay more than we should pay. You know, when regionalization is an economic engine that saves us money, none of us want to jump on board with that. And now the state's throwing this thing down our throats, and, you know, I'm no fan of development, period. I am in favor of affordable housing, but I don't see any reason to build houses just for the sake of houses in the town of Cumberland. And I'd be hard pressed to find my support behind that. But I do see the dire need for affordable housing in Cumberland and across the state. And part of that is you're going to have consequences. It's going to, you know, somebody's going to catch a house on fire. Somebody's going to have kids. Somebody's going to need an ambulance ride. Those are things that go with being a community, and I think we can deal with them. But rampant growth just for the sake of growth is quite frankly scares the hell out of me.
Yep, and just showing you what's possible. Doesn't mean that we've got any takers yet. You know, just putting it all out there.
Sure, come on up.
Stephen Wynn, I live here. Thank you for a fantastic presentation, and listening to people there. A lot of you have said things that I was just jotting down some notes, so just a couple of things that I want to say. If you look at LD 1829, it's absolute. You can say, so I think you've all pointed out that there's this wording about affordable housing, but it has nothing to do with affordable housing. It's a lot of unintended consequences. There are opportunities for dense development, and where there are opportunities to make profit, that happens. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad, it's just reality. I have to say, Bridget, you said, and I understand when you say it's coming, so let's position ourselves for it. There are efforts out there to look at this as an unconstitutional law and to challenge it. There are efforts out there to raise the question of expenses in a very in a very smaller way. Our state constitution says that the state pays for 90% of the implementation of new legislation. Now, does that mean for amending your rules, or does that mean for handing them a bill for your need for bigger schools? And so I just was sitting here with Mr. Google and looking at some of the documents that are out there from the Maine Municipal Association, a couple of the law firms around. So I'm not sure that the effort, that there isn't an effort to revisit this. I know I spoke with Steve at a recent meeting, and I think that there are some people that are just sitting back to see if the time period, what is it, and after January there's going to be some adjustment to the rules or discussion periods or something like that, and maybe people are looking to see where it goes, because it is a Pandora's box. I mean, it will absolutely change things, and the comment that you made of the what's it called, conservation subdivisions. For sure, if you make the buildable part of the lot smaller, but 1829 mandates that you allow a certain number of dwellings, they go up. I grew up in New York City. I'm not going back to New York City. If I have to leave Maine to go to Connecticut to get more rural, that'd be a really bad thing. But anyway, I thank you all for what you're doing. And I would say my personal thought is that once it goes through and it's accepted and and the challenges of constitutionality, which are out there, home rule is soft, but again, if it goes through, these high-density possibilities, they'll be spotty, because there's got to be profit involved, but over time, it will completely change the complexion of a lot of places in Maine, so.
Thank you. Denise?
Comp plan question. So, given this has until January to, we basically what we're talking about being revisited or challenged or whatever, kind of like in limbo of whether or not this is going to stick or change or not. But for the purposes of the comp plan committee and defining these growth areas, basically have to think about both scenarios at the same time, and actually designate where we want the growth so that regardless of the outcome, we are satisfied with our decision. Because it's not like we're going to have an extension, right, on the comp plan, and unless the state does that. Like, we have an allotted period of time to finish it. We don't have all the information we need right now, I think, to make an informed decision on these growth areas based on this statute. So, like, how is the comp plan committee dealing with all of this?
We have been talking about exactly that. So there's no, we're not putting forth something that is no longer going to be, that doesn't take into any of those changes. And so Steve and Bridget have been kind of working together. What did you say, Steve? Usually the adjustments to the legislation come back are kind of at the end of April, early May?
The middle of April.
Middle of April.
Yep.
I'm sorry, middle of April. But the timing for all of that has been taken into account because there's no point in putting something forward if it's not valid, right? And so we're not going to rush it just because we have a date that we've, as a council, determined when we'd like it to be done. When we did that charge, it was for it to be hopefully done kind of towards the end of April. But if we need to extend in order to pull in all of these contingencies, then we'll do that.
Yeah, and I think on top of that too, we had talked about having an 1829 chapter and positioning that to just be able to implement all these changes if this happens. I think we look at growth areas too, the way that the comprehensive plan says to look at growth areas. This is where we're projecting growth to happen, where we're going to target growth to happen in the next 10 years, with or without 1829.
Steve?
Thanks. Maybe I just give some quick thoughts on the development areas as they first emerged. The previous comp plan committee met from 06 to 09. I was not on it, but was following it and so forth. And in compliance with the law at that time, for the first time, designated the 3 growth areas in town, much like you see now. But there were some problems in the phrasing and the clarity of the plan that emerged and was approved in 2009. In 2014, the council appointed an ad hoc land use study committee on which I served, and among the items we were charged with addressing was clarification of the growth areas. To illustrate, while the 09 plan spoke of a town center growth district, it also spoke separately of the Main Street area and what I call the Corey Road area down in the lower right-hand corner of the map. But it didn't clearly say that they were contiguous or whether they were separate and actually 2 different growth areas. So the ad hoc committee that met in 14 and 15 decided that the intent, or felt that it would recommend that the areas be understood to be contiguous, and proposed that plan that recommendation first to the planning board, then to the council, and the council voted to amend the 09 plan to show the town center town center growth area as in fact a contiguous area. There were similar ambiguities in the language pertinent to West Cumberland, and the 14 to 15 ad hoc committee addressed those changes by making it a solidified triangular shaped district. It wasn't clear what was intended by the language used in 2009. And I think the comp plan committee, I'm quite certain, has the authority to make recommendations even now on whether property should be added to one or more of the areas or deleted from them. And then that goes to the planning board and the council for action. We have no ability to implement change on our own.
Thank you.
Penny?
Is the comp plan committee discussing the potential extension of water and sewer in the town?
Could you repeat that?
Is the comprehensive plan committee considering extending water and sewer anywhere in the town? Like, that's another tool, right? That's gonna open up the bucket. So I know in the survey there were questions about whether people wanted to expand water and sewer. I think there was some interest in that. And so if you're going to propose expansion of water and sewer in this comp plan, then you're gonna be impacting those areas for density.
So we would say, make a recommendation on whether or not we want to expand water and sewer, if that's a town desire, and then probably where. But we alone as a comprehensive plan committee can't make that happen. We would just make the recommendation. Yeah. So I think, yes, that's a possibility.
Is there any guidance? It would seem obvious, but I could be totally wrong here, which is why I'm asking. So you would think your TIF districts are symbiotic with the growth areas, and I think for a lot of that they are, right? But if the comprehensive plan committee were to just hypothetically say, let's take Route 1 out of a growth area, that wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense.
It's not gonna make a whole lot of difference, quite frankly, because these lots have access to sewer and water, they're still gonna be subject to the state law.
Got it,
So the
okay.
density is not gonna change that much.
Got it, okay.
Okay, so that's sort of when, going back, if we took all these away, it's sewer that's driving this.
Yep.
It's these white beige parcels that would go back to underlying zoning outside of a growth area if we took them all away. Make that bigger now, it's working.
Andrew?
So it's, just to clarify, it's sewer and water. So if we expand water somewhere, that doesn't change, non-growth area,
Right.
we put water down whatever road.
Yep. I live on
Nothing
Blanchard.
changes.
I live on Blanchard Road here in RR1, and I have public water, but I have a septic. My lot has to stay 4 acres.
Growth is delineated, the growth area is a delineated space. I don't think anybody in this town is going to be jumping on board to expand anything until there's some fallout from this proposed legislation. Until we see what's going to go on, I don't think anybody has a stomach to say, let's expand the growth area, let's expand sewer and water anyplace. So I think there's gonna be a push the pause button.
At least not water for the purposes of new development. There are places that they need water now in there, we're
that's
talking
a
about Bruce
different
Hill.
conversation
So
entirely.
but I mean, it's still the same pool of funds. We're having to run water, having to have capital improvement plans. these funds come from someplace, and we have finite resources. So unless, yeah, the state is going to reimburse us for laying down water lines and whatnot in order to increase density, then no, it falls back to what our priorities are for extending water lines to whatever neighborhoods are deemed
Brazil.
higher priority than new development. So.
Any other questions? Come on up, Denny.
Hi, Denny Gallaudet, I live on Range Road. I'm chair of the Sustainability Subcommittee, and I'm having the sustainability lens that I'm thinking of now. And I would just encourage the folks doing the comprehensive plan to consider the Tuttle Road piece here as a growth area through the back door. By this, you know, it becomes a growth area by virtue of the state legislation. And in terms of sustainability, the school and whatnot, I ran a few numbers, and our town planner was able to suggest that they make some sense. If you just take a look at the large undevelopable lots on Taunton Road, you could be talking possibly up to 3,000 new houses just in that Tuttle Road area, which is the number of houses that now exist in Cumberland. So it's a huge thing that I think the Comprehensive Plan Committee needs to tackle and understand how it's going to fit in.
Thanks, Denny. Any final questions or comments?
Thank you, Bridget.
Big thank you, yeah, to Bridget. That was excellent.
Liked your use of icons.
When there are no words, emojis work. Do the trick. Oh, there's my permanently conserved map for whatever that's worth. You can see Denise House kind of disconnected.
Yeah.
Does
Good point,
that
though, you were looking for
permanently
some-
conserved, that includes all the conservation subdivisions as well, or is that larger permanently conserved?
It includes all of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll take a short recess. Thank you all for coming. Feel free to stick around. And we'll be back in 9 minutes.
Thank you very much. Tig wants to.
Okay, great. Friends, we're going to kick off if you don't mind. Welcome, everybody. It is Monday, October 27th, 2025. We all are calling this town council meeting to order at 7 o'clock. At 5:30, we had a joint meeting with the planning board as well as with the comprehensive plan committee pursuant to discussion and understanding and digestion of LD 1829. First up on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the October 6th, 2025 meeting.
Give you a motion.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. All right. Next up, we have the manager's report. Before Mr. Bull, or actually just so everyone knows, Mr. Sturgis isn't here tonight. He is in Tampa, Florida at the ICMA conference learning about wonderful things that town managers do. So we have our assistant town manager, Chris Bolduc, with us here tonight. But we'd also just kind of first, before we get into that business, welcome up our police chief, Mr. Rumsey. If you wouldn't mind to give your overview over the red flag law question on the ballot, which was a request from the Vice Chair, Councilor Eads.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me, councilors. And what I'm going to plan to do is give you the highest view of these two laws, well, one law and a proposed law that I can, and then I suspect you may have some questions for me, and I will do my very best to field them. So I'm calling this Maine's yellow flag law versus Maine's proposed red flag law, although those two terms are in quotations because those terms are not defined in statute anywhere. This is an extra slide that I didn't send over to you last week, but it occurred to me as I was preparing to come and chat with you this evening that it might be helpful to have a little bit of a graphic to help understand some of the legal standards of proof that we use in our world. And so basically, I would start the quick explanation of legal standards of proof right in the center with preponderance of the evidence. In any situation, usually preponderance of the evidence is used in courts in civil cases, and it basically means 51%. So if you have proof somewhere between 0 and 100, 51%, just enough to tip the scale in your favor, is preponderance of the evidence. So above that, you have clear and convincing, and then above that, you have beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard of proof that's used for a conviction in a criminal case. And if you were going to put a percentage on beyond a reasonable doubt, that's in the 90s. It is a very high amount of proof. Clear and convincing is somewhere between 50 and 90. Below that, you have probable cause. Probable cause is the standard of proof that we use in my world to take a person into custody, to arrest a person for a criminal charge, or to take a person into protective custody if we need to compel them to receive some mental health services because we think they're at a risk of suicide, of hurting themselves or hurting someone else. The Supreme Court in case law has really avoided trying to put a percentage number on probable cause, and I can't cite you the textbook definition of probable cause, but it is something like facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable and prudent police officer to believe that a crime has been committed, is being committed, that evidence of a crime may be found in a particular place, or that a person presents a foreseeable likelihood of foreseeable harm and needs to be taken into protective custody. So it's facts and circumstances, things known to us that make us believe that something's going on, we need to do something about. Below that is reasonable suspicion. We won't spend much time talking about that tonight. That's the standard of proof. We need to stop a car or under certain circumstances to stop a person to inquire what they're doing at a certain place at a certain time of the night or what have you. Hopefully that will help inform our conversation as we go forward. So there's two laws, one that's current and one that's proposed. And I'll chat with you briefly about the current law. That is Title 34B, Section 3862A. Sorry, I forgot to share the A with you when I sent that material over last week. The title of the statute for Maine is Extreme Risk Protection Orders. You can click on that link in the information that I sent over if it's a live link for you, and you can read the entire law if you'd like to. That is known in common parlance around here as a yellow flag law or as a weapon restriction order, but the law is called Extreme Risk Protection Orders. Under the current law, extreme risk protection orders are initiated only by law enforcement. A person comes to us to tell us we have a concern about a family member, a neighbor, a friend, a person that we have observed that is acting in a way that we believe makes them a danger to themselves or others. The process for an extreme risk protection order requires us to take that person into protective custody. And we use the probable cause standard of proof to take a person into protective custody. When we take someone into protective custody, we are arresting their movement. So in some ways it is similar to taking someone into custody for a crime, but we're not arresting them for committing a crime. We're just holding them so that they don't hurt themselves or someone else, and we're taking them to compel them to receive a medical evaluation to make sure that they're okay. For an extreme risk protection order, we need protective custody plus a belief that a person has or could come into possession of dangerous weapons. We take them into protective custody, and then we have them assessed by a medical practitioner. If a medical practitioner finds a likelihood of foreseeable harm, then we take our weapons restriction order application, we get it endorsed by a judge or a justice of the peace, and that individual becomes prohibited from possessing dangerous weapons. Weapons have to be surrendered to law enforcement, and then within 30 days, there's a judicial hearing on the case. This is really important because there's a big difference between the existing law and the proposed law here. At a judicial hearing for the current law, the individual would be represented by legal counsel, and then the state would be represented by a district attorney. So we take the person into protective custody. We have them evaluated by a medical practitioner. The district attorney then acts on behalf of the state to argue about why this person should be the subject of an extreme risk protection order. At that hearing, the state has to prove by a clear and convincing standard of proof that the person presents this likelihood of foreseeable harm. And if that burden of proof or standard of proof is met, then a person can be prohibited from possessing dangerous weapons for up to 1 year. Any questions about the existing law before I explain a little about the proposed law? The proposed law is LD 1387. It's about 12 or 13 pages long. I have a copy of it here, and I've read the entire thing. The bill title is An Act to Protect Maine Communities by Enacting the Extreme Risk Protection Order Act. So it has substantially the same title as an existing law, but that is what the bill is called. It is being referred to as a red flag law. One big difference between it and the existing law is that it can be initiated not only by law enforcement, but by a family or a household member. So an individual who has a family member or a member of their household that they believe is a danger to themselves or others in the way that the proposed law defines it, then that private citizen can go to the court and file a petition at the court. That has to be done in person, and it has to be done during normal business hours. So that is a big difference between the current law and the proposed law, that if a private person wants to go and do that and they choose not to engage law enforcement in the process, if that happens on a Friday evening that they become concerned, they're waiting until Monday morning, or if they live in a rural area where their district court isn't open every day, they're waiting until the next time their district court is open to go and file that paperwork for an extreme risk protection order under the proposed law. One other difference about that, or one, I think, notable piece of this is that when the individual goes to the court to petition the court for this red flag law order, that the court cannot give them any guidance about how to fill that paperwork out. They're not represented by a district attorney, they're not represented by an advocate, they are going there by themselves to work their way through this process. There's no protective custody or medical practitioner evaluation. And then the emergency order can be issued by a judge if the petition shows good cause. That's how it's phrased in the bill. Good cause isn't a term that we use in our world, so I don't know the legal definition of it. I'm not sure there is a legal definition of it, but we believe on the law enforcement side, if this passes, it will be very similar to probable cause. The emergency order, if it's granted and served on the defendant, for lack of a better term, it does identify the petitioner. So if I have a family member and I'm concerned about them and I go to the court and I petition the court and the court issues the order, I will be identified as the person that asked for that order to be issued. There would be a hearing similar to the existing law, and at that hearing, the petitioner So me, if, as a private citizen, if I'm the one that filed that paperwork, I have to prove significant danger by a preponderance of the evidence standard. So when we talked at the very beginning about our standards of proof, under the new law, you have to have 51% proof to have the red flag order issued, or under the new law. The existing law is clear and convincing, so it's a slightly higher standard of proof. At that hearing, there's no district attorney. However, so the petitioner would represent themselves to the court, should they show up. However, the respondent is still entitled to legal representation. So a little bit different than the existing law. Under the proposed law, the respondent is always going to be represented by an attorney. The petitioner, unless they have money to hire a private attorney, is going to be representing themselves to the court. And just a couple pieces of additional information. The proposed law does not repeal and replace the existing law. If passed, these two laws will both exist together. Just a couple of other short, quick facts. The current law has been utilized at this point over 1,000 times, and it is being utilized now successfully at a rate of approximately 1.5 times per day. So if you've read any of the news coverage about the existing law, you may know the law was passed and it wasn't used very much by law enforcement. It was a new thing. The process is fairly complex, and so its uptake and use wasn't what it should have been, and it wasn't what was expected by the people that passed the law. However, following the tragedy in Lewiston, there's been a big push by law enforcement to educate, to help understand how this process works, and it is now being used a lot, more than an average of 1 time per day. So that's a little bit about the existing law and the proposed law. That was a whole lot of information in a short period of time. You may have some questions for me, and I'm happy to do my best to answer those questions for you if you have some.
Bob, then Andrew.
It's, from your description and explanation, it seems to me that there's going to be much more utilization of that yellow flag law rather than the red flag law, because of the idea of somebody having to go, my son is about ready to go crazy. Well, it's really dad that's the guy who's off the deep end, and it seems to me that, do you see it that way, or?
I can tell you only from the law enforcement perspective, because what I don't think any of us know is how often individuals would go to the court to petition the court for the issuance of one of the red flag orders. I think if a person is coming to law enforcement to say, I have an immediate concern about safety of a person, which personally is always going to be my preference. If there's a person in your home that has threatened suicide, threatened to harm somebody else, has harmed somebody else, has done something that is either an indicator of mental health concern that need to be immediately addressed, or maybe is a crime that has occurred, we would rather know immediately so that we can take action to make that scene safe and then initiate our process. And our process, which can take place 24 hours a day, the existing process, would be the yellow flag law, and we would probably be utilizing that or utilizing and enforcing criminal law if a crime had actually occurred that we could take action on and then work through whatever process. Sometimes we do take a person into custody, have them evaluated for mental health, and then charge them with a crime once that part has been handled. So on the law enforcement side, it's hard to say. We're kind of looking into the future with a crystal ball, but I would assume law enforcement would still utilize the existing law because it can take place 24 hours a day.
I think my point to be is if someone feels that there is a danger to a loved one or a family member or a friend, they can reach out to law enforcement at any time, regardless of either law.
Yes. Absolutely. And that would be my preference, that you would call us immediately and we would help you work through that.
Andrew?
So just a quick question on the success rate. What's defining success rate? As in, people are coming to law enforcement throughout the state at roughly 1.5 times per day, or that people are coming to law enforcement and then law enforcement is going through the process and finding that this person meets the standards of they are potentially a harm to themselves or others imminently, and sort of that whole define success, I guess.
Thank you. Great question, and I should have been a little bit more clear. Utilizing successfully means that weapons restriction orders under the extreme risk protection order existing statute are being issued about 1.5 times per day. So once we have taken a person into protective custody and then gone through the process of the weapons restriction order, we are overwhelmingly successful in having those issued. And I've heard the statistic, I don't remember, but it is in the 90s. It is very unusual that we have conducted our investigation, talked to the people we need to talk to, had the person medically evaluated, and then an order is not getting issued.
And I might have missed this, once both processes go through and it's determined that protective order is issued, then they look the same? It's just sort of that front end of it that's different, of how you get to that? The judge determining, yes, this person is a harm?
Right. Great question. There may be some minor differences, but the process would be substantially similar in that we would get an order that would require us to go and serve the order on the individual, that would notify them that they're a prohibited person, that there would be a process where we would negotiate the surrender of any dangerous weapons that are in that person's possession, and then there would be a hearing that would go on. There are some differences, as I mentioned, in the burdens of proof that would take place at the hearing, and how the state may or may not be arguing a case, depending on which law you're using. But they're quite similar as far as what we do immediately upon receiving an order.
So it's two paths to get to the same result, potentially. The result is either the judge says, no, this person isn't, we don't think they are, or the judge says yes, and then once that determination's been made, it's sort of the same to you, whichever way it was arrived at, right?
Yes, there's one really small sort of caveat I would share with you, is that what our understanding on the law enforcement side is that under the current law, when there's a district attorney that is arguing the state's case, and when there is an attorney for the respondent that is representing the respondent, there are frequently some negotiations that go on between those two attorneys. And as an example, a district attorney may talk to the respondent's attorney and say, hey, listen, if your client agrees to a 6-month order prohibiting them from possessing weapons, and during the 6-month process they go and get a mental health evaluation and follow through with whatever plan of care is recommended by the mental health professional, in 6 months would be happy to take a look. If that is all being properly handled and the person is being compliant with that plan, would be happy to look at the order with an eye towards dismissing it. So there is some sort of negotiation, similar probably to a plea bargain maybe, that happens under the existing law. Under the new law, that wouldn't be able to take place because there's not somebody representing the state's interest in that case.
Thank you.
Sure.
Denise?
Talking about two separate paths to the same result, you did mention, I think, that with the proposed law, there's no protective custody.
Correct.
So someone makes a complaint. In the current system, they are taken into protective custody, had a mental health evaluation. If that evaluation showed that they needed to remain in custody in the meantime because they present a danger to others, is that what happens? They remain in custody until that hearing when things are sussed out? And
Very good question. I'm glad that you asked it. Even within the current process, there are two things that happen once we take a person into protective custody. Excuse me. The officer navigates the path towards the weapons restriction order, and so there is an evaluation by a mental health professional who works for the Spurwink Clinic that specifically does that piece. They evaluate the person in protective custody to determine whether they represent a likelihood of foreseeable harm. If they believe they do, they sign off on the paperwork. We take that to a judge or a justice of the peace to get the order that prohibits them from possessing weapons. However, we also then follow through with a mental health professional, generally at an emergency room, that's going to evaluate that person to determine whether they need to remain in protective custody, perhaps be admitted for inpatient care. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. So there are sort of two evaluations that take place while the police have someone in protective custody and are pursuing a weapons restriction order. It is, do you need to remain in the hospital to get mental health care, and then should you be restricted from possessing dangerous weapons? Both of those things happen at the same time.
so should this pass, basically the petitioner, or whatever the term is for the person initiating this, depending on their own risk they would feel to themselves if this person found out that they had contacted someone about them, would be either, if you want anonymity, take the law enforcement route. If you, that's not that big of a deal, you know, put yourself out there and face this person in court and prove that they're a danger. So I'm just thinking about the logistics from like a family member's perspective, what
Right.
is safer for them. So if there's no protective custody piece with the proposed law, I could see that being kind of putting them at risk, but that's, I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that? Like what you think is safer for the person lodging the complaint?
Sure, I think a couple things. If it's a question of anonymity, there appears to be none under the proposed law. Under the existing law, the way it generally works operationally is that if a person says, hey, listen, I have this concern, I want you to do something, I want to remain anonymous, we do our very best to do that, but there's not a legal guarantee that we can make sure that happens, especially if it was two people living in the household together, one of them is not well, the other one goes to look for help, and then we show up. You know, there may be a pretty easy way for that person to determine who called. So the other piece of it, though, is the proposed process would be very, very close to the current process for a protection from abuse order. Under a protection from abuse order, if a person feels that they've been abused, they go to the court, they fill out the paperwork, they represent themselves, a court date would get set, and then there could be a hearing down the road. In the meantime, if that order isn't immediately issued as an emergency order, in the meantime, the defendant and the petitioner, they may have contact with each other, and there are times in the real world where a person convinces another person to not go forward with the process that they have initiated. And so under this process, there's not a no contact order. So if it's two people that live in the same household, one of them goes to the court, petitions for an order is granted, we serve the order, prohibit the person from possessing weapons, take their dangerous weapons, they're established a court date 14 days hence. Those two people may still be living in the same house. Those two people may still be having a relationship and having interaction, having communication, and the petitioner may decide not to follow through with their petition. That happens in the real world under the existing protection order law, and I could see it happening under the proposed law also.
One more question, because I think this was, well, I don't want to assume, but I think it was largely in part due to Lewiston and all of that, but that, we know, huge failure on the Army's part. Has there been increased collaboration between DOD and military and reserve and whatever, and local law enforcement after that happened, to where they are cooperating more and there's, I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that question, but my suspicion would be yes, because, you know, this certainly put that entire process under a bright light microscope, and so I think everybody has taken a very close look at what they are doing for business and how they're doing it and how they need to make things better for public safety, hence the very serious uptake on the law enforcement side of the use of the weapons restriction order under the existing law. And even in our small town with a relatively low call volume, we have utilized the existing law 5 times, I'm going to guess. And so for a town our size, I would say that is pretty substantial. So it's being used, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I think you just had an awesome presentation, Chief. Very well thought out, and thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. Anyone else? Good.
All
Thank
right.
you, Chief.
You are most welcome.
We'll see you in a minute. Mr. Bolduc, anything from your end?
I know the manager gave you an operations report in your packet, so I won't go through that. I just wanted to put a reminder out that this Thursday is the last day for absentee voting here at Town Hall, in preparation of the election next week. This past Saturday wrapped up the conclusion of the waste events on Saturdays. I'm happy to report that this is a very positive event. All three of them went really well, really organized, and we got a lot of positive feedback from the residents on this. So that all went really great. This will be the last week for Valhalla Golf Course. Winter's coming, so this last weekend, if you want to golf, hit Valhalla. And if you don't think winter's coming, I ordered the Christmas tree today for the Centerley Times. So here we go. Game on. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. Okay, next up is public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone here who would like to come up and chat? Not this evening. Okay, we will close public discussion and we will move into legislation and policy. And on that note, as part of legislation and policy, there is the opportunity for public comment per Article 2, Section 7 of the Town Charter. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each item on the agenda, and comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. We are going to do a little switcheroo on the agenda order tonight. Chief Rumsey is going to come up on 25-108, and then we are going to go back around to 25-107. Stacy Mazer, our library director, is here to present on the semi-quincentennial and has agreed graciously to go after the shellfish permits. And I did not just surprise this on Chip now. So Chip, thank you for being here again. Let's talk about shellfish.
Sure. Also, thank you, Stacy. And I learned what semi-quincentennial meant right before the meeting started, so my vocabulary grew a little bit. Councilors, thank you. I think you have the proposal in front of you, but just quick little bit of back information. In the current year, 2025, the town has sold 38 resident shellfish licenses, 8 of those to seniors, 25 non-resident shellfish licenses, 3 of those to seniors, and then 1 each of commercial resident shellfish licenses, and then non-resident shellfish license. At the Shellfish Commission's most recent meeting, the commission debated what to do with allocations, or what to recommend to you for allocations for the coming year. And based on the number of licenses sold for the last several years, the fact that there does not appear to be a thriving population of softshell clams in our town's mudflats, the commission is recommending to you unanimously to keep the same allocation for shellfish licenses for 2026. That would be an unlimited number of resident recreational licenses, 25 non-resident recreational licenses, and 1 each of resident and non-resident commercial licenses.
Before we go into council discussion, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item on the agenda? All right, we will close public comment and move to council discussion. Andrew, shaken.
Can you just delineate the haul or differentiations between commercial and non-commercial? I don't know. Is there a with non-commercial or with residential you can take X number of pounds, but with commercial you can only is there any? What's the breakdown there?
I don't know the answer to that question, Counselor. I apologize. I know on the recreational side, I think it's 1 bushel per day of shellfish, and on the commercial side, I can quickly look up the ordinance for you, or I can send it through to Brenda with the minutes if you want. I don't know the answer to the difference between the 2 of them. I know there is a difference. I'm just not sure off the top of my head what it is.
I'm asking more if there is not a thriving shellfish population. Is that because we are doing too much harvesting, or because the water and the soil is not good, or just I just want to make sure we're not making that not thriving even less thriving, as opposed to letting it come back and
Yes, understood. I think the explanation for that is not that there is an over harvesting of the resource that's there. I think it is there has been a green crab infestation. I think there are concerns about warming of the water. I think there are just environmental concerns that have led not only in Cumberland, but up and down the coast to a serious decline in some of the shellfish populations. On the commercial side, the resident that owns the commercial license, I think, does very little digging. I think they keep the license as sort of a legacy license, and the commercial, non-resident commercial digger, I think that individual does some digging. Primarily, I think they come here and dig for quahogs, which my understanding is that that's a hard shell clam. I didn't know there was more than one kind of clam when I came here 9 years ago, so bear with me. But I think there are some hard shell clams that digger comes and harvests from time to time. But I don't think there is a ton of digging going on down there that is probably a factor in what we're seeing for the population.
I'll give you a motion. There's no other discussion.
Did you have something, Jeff?
Well, I did a little research and found out that the commercial license gives you 2 bushels of shellfish a day, where the recreational is 1 peck of mixed shellfish a day.
Okay.
So
Never seen a peck in a bushel.
I think it's like 4 pecks to a bushel. So
Thank you for
I
correcting me.
don't think we're gonna clean out the clams. I mean, I'm no biologist, but I think we'll be all right.
Did we do some seeding last year as well?
They did. The Shellfish Commission worked with DMR and our harbor masters, and they undertook a very small scale seeding project. So seeding basically means seed clams, tiny little baby clams that were put into some very small patches of our mud flats, I think 3 different spots. And I believe the areas that were seeded were basically like a 12-foot by 12-foot square. And they put a bunch of seed in there, did a conservation closure, marked the area off with some stakes so that people wouldn't dig in there, with a goal toward just finding out if that's a viable way for us to try to bring the population back. So that happened last late spring, early summer, maybe late May, early June. And at our recent Shellfish Commission meeting, we discussed the desire to go back out this late spring, early summer, to do a little bit of a survey, just to see, does there appear to be any change in the areas that we seeded and then areas outside of where we seeded, and potentially to do a little bit more seeding this year, just to try to see if we can make something happen.
It's great to hear. I would take a motion if there was one.
Give you a motion. I move to set the 2026 shellfish license allocations as follows: unlimited resident recreational licenses, 25 non-resident recreational licenses, 1 resident commercial license, and 1 non-resident commercial license, as recommended by the Shellfish Conservation Commission.
I'll give you a second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Jeff and I just doing all the heavy lifting.
All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay. Chief, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good to see you, counselors.
Before we move on, can I say something about green crabs?
Sure.
I mean, this is just Google, but apparently green crabs are edible. They're not
They
as
are.
meaty.
We
but
sell them. My
You
husband and I.
also, like, they're not protected or anything, and I don't think there's a license for personal non-commercial use, but some towns have exemptions that allow, like, unlimited green crab harvesting to protect their local shellfish populations.
Like it.
So I don't know if we need to do something like that or if we want to, but, I mean, there's got to be some natural predator besides humans.
I will say, we keep traps in Casco Bay, and it's not as many as you think are coming up in traps, but what we do take, we either kill or sell to restaurants,
Nice.
so.
Bailey knows.
All right. We can talk about it more during new business.
Can't wait.
Let's get crabby. All right. Next up is, we're going back to our normal order, 25-107, to consider and act on authorizing Prince Memorial Library to submit a grant application to Maine Semi-Quincentennial Commission grant program for a digitization project. I'm so happy to welcome up our library director.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. My name is Stacy Mazer, and I am the director of Prince Memorial Library, and I'm here on behalf of a collaboration with our North Yarmouth Historical Society.
Welcome.
We are today going to talk about a project that we will be submitting to the Maine Semi-Quincentennial Commission. The Maine Cultural Arts Council and the Maine State Archives are running that commission. And the grant project is for basically digitizing and sharing two fairly rare and historically significant record sets that are currently in the ownership of North Yarmouth. We are going to be working on the ancient North Yarmouth's proprietors records from 1681 to 1809, and the town records and vitals from 1733 to 1784. The town has done an excellent job of preserving and cleaning and binding and mylaring those very old records, but they are locked behind a vault door in the North Yarmouth town office, yes. So we would like to bring those out into the light and showcase the potential treasures of history we could find within those pages. We could potentially be finding things about early settler life, local governance, and community development. We are particularly going to be looking for references about Indigenous people and marginalized communities, and we are hopefully also going to be maybe finding stuff about maybe the environment, the natural environment at the time. If you did not know, ancient North Yarmouth encompassed the towns of modern-day Cumberland, Shubig Island, Freeport, North Yarmouth, Pownal, Yarmouth, and parts of Brunswick and Harpswell. So we do feel like digitizing these documents will be impactful for many communities around us, including our own in Cumberland. As a shared resource of the towns of Cumberland and North Yarmouth, we do think it's important to work with the North Yarmouth Historical Society on this very important project. Of particular note, within these documents, there is a reading of the Declaration of the Independence, which is really cool. And yeah, we just think it's going to really work well with basically what the Semi-Quincentennial Commission is looking for in relation to highlighting efforts of connection, sharing, and learning within our state in reference to our broader American story.
I'm Julia Walters. I'm the Archives Director at the North Yarmouth Historical Society. And I'm going to speak a little bit about the execution and the community impact of this project. So our plan is to transcribe over 1,600 pages of these early documents. That includes scanning 800 pages of a transcription that was typed in the 1940s, and then doing a OCR on it, which is optical character recognition. So that scans the page and makes it a digital copy, so everything is searchable. We'll then upload the scans and the transcription to the digital Maine repository, which is the partnership of the Maine State Library, the Maine State Archives, and other community institutions. We've done some of that other work at Prince before. So all of that is in compliance with the state archival standards for metadata and scan quality. For the public engagement, this project isn't about digitization completely. It's also about a dialogue within the community. We have a lot of shared history to talk about. We want to also develop museum quality exhibit panels and a public presentation so we can reach out to the public with the information that we find in these documents. We'll also be exploring the feasibility of a print edition of the transcription. The partnerships we have, all the communities within ancient North Yarmouth boundaries are involved with this, and we will be organizing a gathering of all those historical societies to start working together on more projects in the future, as well as this project. We also have partnerships with the Maine Ulster Scots Project, which is based in Freeport, and YCARE, the Yarmouth Community Alliance for Racial Equity, that have been doing a lot of Indigenous research in Yarmouth. So.
And these documents are just sort of the tip of the iceberg of all of the other documents that the town of North Yarmouth holds. They have annual town records for that time period all the way up to like 1790. So at some point, we would love to continue this work. And this is really a continuation of that legacy that Thomas Bennett started by doing a lot of digitization of historical documents within our town.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yes.
Looking at the public presentation, is that going to be like one big presentation with all the partners there? Is it going to be separated into separate things?
I think
panel does?
maybe the best way to describe it would be like a traveling show. So it would be, we'd come up with 4 panels that represent some of the information we find in the documents. We'd come up with a half-hour speaking presentation that Julia could do at basically the North Yarmouth Historical Society, or she could then take it to Cumberland, or if someone within the Cumberland Historical Society is comfortable with having a script handed to them, they could read it, or any of the historical societies or other organizations locally could either invite North Yarmouth or present it themselves.
And once that's done, is this exhibit going to just live somewhere permanently, or is it also going to travel around?
I don't know, we haven't got that far on our planning.
Okay, sorry. It's cool.
Andrew?
So, 2 questions. Is there somewhere on the application that we can have, Freeport, Powell, Brunswick, Hartwell,
It should be on there already.
but that they are saying like, yeah, hey, this is awesome. We fully support this.
I think
like their
we've already
historical
heard
societies.
from
We've heard from
Freeport.
Freeport and Yarmouth, and Cumberland.
And
So, yeah.
yes, so we're working on it,
Okay.
but yes. They're listed within, I think, the ones that we just mentioned within those partnership opportunities.
Yeah, I saw at the end, partnership opportunities. It'd be great if we can get them to
Yes.
sign on to this
We
as
can
well.
try, it is due in
A few days.
2 days. So
Saw that too.
we might submit it just as it is if we can't get any verbal confirmations.
We are planning on involving them in the
yes.
project once we get
Great.
established, though, but yeah.
And then am I reading this right? That North Yarmouth holds an original copy of the Declaration of Independence?
Yes.
That's awesome. And
It's,
I think
it's
that's-
housed at the state archives currently because it's so valuable, but yeah, the town of North Yarmouth does own that record, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
I hope they have better security than the Louvre.
Yeah, right.
I was wondering if someone was gonna crack a joke about that.
So we are gonna submit the grant for the full amount that is being offered. We feel like our chances are pretty decent. We think it's a pretty cool project. We hope we get it, and we'll see where it goes.
Is there anyone? Oh,
Yeah, just, looks like, you're applying for $10,000 in the application. Will that get you where you need to go with the project, or are we gonna fall short? What's your thoughts with that?
I think that we will be fine with
Okay.
10,000 for doing these 2 volumes. We talked a lot about it, and we've used, I don't know if you saw some of the calculations that we used that we found online. These are official groups that help you make that determination monetarily and hour-wise of how many hours you should come up with for a program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this? Okay, we'll close public comment on that item. I think this is so cool. I worked in the Muskie Archives as a college student, and it's just so wild how different. I mean, I was like just labeling photos and stuff, and now everything's digitized and so much more accessible. And I think this is a great project that I would happily support.
Do you want to share a few of the things that you've run across?
I have, today just saw there's a record in the back of vital records for colored people. So that was really interesting that was in there. It's not very big, but they're there. And I found some references to like bounties on wolves. So that was interesting too. And there's some sad stuff in our history for sure, but it's interesting to see it written down.
Very neat.
Take a motion.
Give you
if
a
there
motion.
was one.
Okay. I have to do all the work around here, so, because Ron's gone.
Jump on it before anyone else.
Oh,
can,
yeah, okay.
so.
I move to authorize Prince Memorial Library to submit a grant application to Maine Semi-Quincentennial Commission Grant Program for a digitization project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Brenda,
you.
Stacy, and Julia, thank you so much for being here.
At the
and
library.
Please come back at some point and tell us how it's going. We'd love to get a visual. Cool beans. Super. All right.
Smash these 3 together?
Yeah.
Since Mike's not here to suggest it?
Since Mike's not here, yeah, 25-109, 25-110, and 25-111.
Do we not want to have 111 separate?
Maybe
just
we
to
should have
put his feet
111
to the
separate
fire?
because there's a very special person in the waiting room. Okay, cool. So do we want to, is there consensus there?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do 109 and 110 together.
All right. Okay, so 25-109, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on an automobile graveyard / junkyard permit for Cumberland Salvage, as well as an automobile recycling permit for Cumberland Salvage for 2 different time periods, October 31st, 2025 to October 31st, 2026, and October 31st, 2025 through October 31st, 2030. Okay. Chris, does that pass the straight face test?
Sure does, and you have letters from, memos from the CEO, Bill Longley, in your packets, that he's inspected the sites and staff is recommending approval.
I mean, if our code enforcement officer of the year gave his thumbs up, that's always a good sign. This is a public hearing, though, so would anyone here like to come up and be a formal part of the public hearing? Okay, we will close the public hearing. Council discussion.
Loving that penmanship. Really like it. That's about it.
Andrew, what'd you think of it?
I mean, I think it's good penmanship. I would like to see it typed out, if possible, to make it easier for those of us who do not have good penmanship.
You didn't like the contrast between the black type and the blue ink?
Pretty
Come
good.
on.
I'll give you a motion to approve.
All right. Are you combining?
I'm combining.
Okay. Oh, boy.
I move to approve the automobile graveyard junkyard permit for Cumberland Salvage for the period of October 31st, 2025 through October 31st, 2026. And I move to approve the automobile recycling permit for Cumberland Salvage for the period of October 31st, 2025 through October 31st, 2030.
I'll give you a second on that.
Got a motion and a second. Any
Guys are fighting
discussion?
over all these things here, I tell you.
That's why I just don't even bother. I just chill.
You got the last one.
I know, I had to jump quickly to get there.
Why?
Ripping it right out from underneath me. My only comment is, I knew Gerald Senior, Ronnie's grandfather, and a remarkable man in his own right, and the family and they're all, to a fault, they are a generous family, and they're an asset to the community, so I won't say any more than that.
Ronnie's giving you eyeballs, but. All right, any other discussion on the motion, or we'll call for a vote? All those in favor? All right, unanimous. Brenda. Okay. Big night of public hearings. All right, then we will move on to 25-111 to hold a public hearing to consider and act on an automobile recycling permit for COP Motors for the period of October 31st, 2025 through October 31st, 2030. Did I read that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did we want to look to combine? Nope, never mind. Okay. Is there hypothetically anyone who might work for COP Motors that might want to come up and chat with their former colleagues about this agenda item?
Gotta get those steps in.
Good evening. I'm just here to answer questions.
Oh my gosh, Ron.
Why didn't you type it? I'm kidding.
We did receive also a note, a memo from our code enforcement officer who recommended approval. But this is a public hearing, so is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this? All right, I will close the public hearing. Any productive questions for Ron, or are we just feeling pretty good about this?
Garbage questions.
I just got a comment. It's a well-run facility, and I think it's safe facility as well.
Schematic is 10 out of 10. It's good.
There are some typed pieces. I misspoke. And cursive, but.
All right, I'll give you a motion. I move to approve the automobile recycling permit for COP Motors for the period of October 31st, 2025 through October 31st, 2030.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Brenda, thank you, Ron, and thank you, Wendy, for coming out tonight.
See you in 5 years. I expect you'll all still be here.
All right, moving right along, 25, excuse me, -112, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on the adoption of the Maine Municipal Association Model General Assistance Ordinance for the period of October 1st, 2025 through October 30th, 2026. So everyone will recall that this is the kind of part 2 of the general assistance for plan for 2026. It is something that we're required annually to maintain for state reimbursement. It is a public hearing, so we'll get into that. I think this is just incredibly important. Also, I know we're probably going to talk about this a little bit during new business, but as SNAP benefits are going to be suspended starting on November 1st, this feels like a really important thing to make sure that we have tied up. Before we get into council discussion, as it is a public hearing, would anyone like to comment on this particular agenda item? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and go into council discussion on this. Does anyone have any,
I'm on board.
yeah, it's something we want to make sure is I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Yeah, yep, exactly. Thank you so much. It's been a long day.
I cannot say that I read every word of this document.
It's big.
I can say that I read some of it.
This was a
Anyways,
big
it has
packet.
my support.
Is there any items or anything that anyone wants to dig into, or?
I feel good about it.
Yeah, we talked detailed enough last time when we talked about this a bit with Matt. I feel okay with it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I don't really like is that pet care costs aren't included, and I just worry sometimes because, and I know that it's not there for pets, but I would hope that there are other resources for people, because having a pet is a good thing for mental health, but we're not gonna change that here. Okay, I would, I guess, take a motion unless,
I'll give you a motion.
all right.
I move to adopt the Maine Municipal Association Model General Assistant Ordinance for the period of October 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2026.
Second.
Yes, well done. A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Brenda. Okay.
That's my second for the year.
All right.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you guys can keep doing them.
Our final item on the agenda is 25, sorry, nope, it is not. Our second to last item on the agenda is 25-113, to authorize the town manager to accept payment for delinquent taxes in the amount of $3,500 on a property identified on tax map R04, lot 004. This is a one-time payment arrangement initiated by the property owner, covers their outstanding balances for prior year taxes, interest, and fees. And I think that means that we can clear the lien if that's something that we take action on this evening.
I think this is a partial payment, and then they plan to pay off the other portion of it at the end of the year.
At the end of the
So
year.
then we would release the lien for 2024.
Got it.
Did I understand you, Chris, that there's a plan in place to pay off everything?
Correct, for the 2024 taxes, then move forward 2025. Excuse me.
Is there a plan for that?
Yes, he's working with Jen Doten on this. I don't have the details here, but I just know that this was going to clear up this lien for the FY 2024.
Can you refresh my memory? Has this been on the agenda before? I feel like I'm recalling this vaguely being a discussion. Was it not this property? Okay.
Remember a different one.
As long as it's not that.
It's not that one that you're thinking of with
Okay.
the very large sum.
Yeah. Okay. I have no issue with this. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts, but no issue on my end.
I feel good about the fact that there's a plan and
Yeah.
we're moving in the right direction, and that's a big sum of money. So
Agreed.
I'll provide you with another motion if you'd like.
Who would be so honored?
I move to authorize the town manager to accept payment for delinquent taxes in the amount of $3,500.00 on the property identified as tax map R04, lot 004.
I'll give you a second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. All right. Our final agenda item and our final public hearing, 25-114, to hold a public hearing to consider an act on accepting Cortland Court as a town road. Oh, I love talking about town roads. Okay, so Chris, I think that you had some kind of larger context about this, but just for the people at home, sort of, everything has to be for it to be accepted. The standard has to be up to the public standard, correct? So that means your snowplows can get in there.
Correct. I mean, this process started with the Orchard Road subdivision that came to the planning board, I think, of 2018. The process with the town is when they come forward with their proposal to hopefully become a public road, we then initiate inspections. This was actually designed by Goral Palmer, and we had CV Mahar do all the peer review inspections, meaning we have engineers on site during all aspects. They review the detention ponds, the drainage coming in, the road infrastructure, the gravel going down. And we also go in and have them put down a base coat of pavement when it's done, and then we winterize it for 1 year. So then we can go back in, look at the road, make sure it wintered fine, and then we observe them putting on a final coat of pavement. And then we go in and inspect all the catch basins. We look at all the detention ponds to make sure that everything is functioning properly. And then we make a recommendation. Well, the developer will then approach the town requesting that we accept it based on the ordinance. We have all the documentation in here. CV Mahar has done a final inspection. We've done a final inspection, and the town attorneys have reviewed all the pertinent documents, warranty deeds. Everything's in place, so staff is recommending accepting the infrastructure into public ownership. The developer, Bill Clark, is here tonight. He worked with Bill through the whole process. If you have any questions of him, he's here to answer any questions.
Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Good evening.
One comment I just had is I love that there's the escrow account for any maintenance issues. I think that's really cool. I was just wondering, is that something I don't think we've seen that before, have we?
Yeah, we do. On any town road, we hold 2 years. It's kind of a maintenance bond. So if something fails within the first 2 years, we can use that to make the repairs.
Very cool. Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name's William Clark. I'm the president of WP Clark and Sons, and we developed Orchard Road subdivision. It was always the intent to come before you and ask you to petition the town to accept the road. This started when Bill Shane was town manager, and then all their inspections, as Chris has mentioned. We did put kind of a designer culvert in the first section of the subdivision, and it was a request of Bill Shane. And he clearly asked if I intended to petition the town for a public way, and I did say absolutely, and he said, well, then the design as drawn needs to be changed. We bought this 6-foot culvert. The initial design was a metal culvert, and he said we wouldn't accept it. had that not been done. So that, all that's been done, it's all been approved, it's all been inspected, and I'm here this evening to petition the board members to accept Cortland Court as a public way.
Thank you
Glad
for
to answer
coming
any
out.
other questions you might have.
I have a question, but it's based on like planning board process, and Bob probably knows the answer, or Jeff knows the answer, or, you know, Chris. Is it typically assumed that a new development is going to want to have their road as a public road, and do we mostly accept them? Like, is that kind of the way business happens nowadays, is if you make a subdivision, the town's gonna take on that road?
It really depends on what they're coming, some want it to be a private road, but we still
Okay.
even inspect those to make sure they're up to a private road standard.
Okay.
I think I understand your question, but it's your prerogative to accept the road. You can, or you don't have to. As long as I've been here, we've never not accepted a road that was built to town standards.
But it's not part of the planning board approval process where like, check these boxes and basically it's gonna be a public road, except the council just needs to sign off on it. Like, is there like a track of, it looks like there are things, very specific things that need to happen in order for it to be accepted.
Correct.
So,
There's a
okay.
lot of specific things that outlined
Yeah.
in the ordinance that have to happen, to the type of grade of gravel, compaction.
Okay.
So, and most of the time, they're met for the public road standard in the town.
Okay. Andrew?
So this is sort of following on Denise's question, more of a higher level, not specific to this road. When we're looking at subdivisions, and by we, probably this is more of a planning board thing, but also the town that are coming before and saying, hey, we want this road to be accepted as a public road, it meets all the requirements. Are we also looking at what that does to our infrastructure for, primarily plowing? But the added costs of maintaining that road and sort of what we're getting out of that as a town, because if we keep accepting public roads, that's going to increase our costs over time, and we already have the tax base. It's not like, the taxes, I'm guessing the taxes don't change from private road to a public road. All of a sudden the value goes way up, and we're able to get more taxes out of those houses or anything like that, but it's an added cost to the town. Are we looking at that at any point in this process of, how many more hours it's going to take to, plan the route to include this road now to plow it as well, and what that's going to do to services, and then at a certain point we're going to need another truck and all that.
This has been a debate with councils for years on when do we stop accepting public roads, just because you're correct. We're going to have to plow them, we're going to have to maintain them, and within 15 to 20 years, we're going to have to repave them. But we do look into it. I mean, the cost of the plowing is pretty much all we're really doing, with these new subdivision roads. So I do figure in a cost, I do figure in routes, and as we accept more and more roads, the cost is going to go up. We're going to need more plow trucks, more plow drivers. When we had to accept all the state roads, the good thing was that we plowed most of them already, but we've just picked up the cost of that infrastructure. So we're now paying for the striping, we're paying for the catch basin cleaning. So there is a chain reaction as we do take over the roads. Taking over all of Tuttle Road, Skillens Road, Blanchard Road, it's going to be a huge cost to the town. So that is an adequate observation, is that, yes, as we accept these roads, there is a cost associated with it. So.
And the people that live on those roads are also taxpayers, though, right? So it's also, there's that's the other side of it, I think. But I do think that this is a public hearing. Did I open that up? Is there anyone, before we go into more robust dialogue, that wants to comment on this agenda item?
Sorry.
All right, then we'll close the public hearing and back to council discussion. Bob?
Couple of things. I think that a workshop is in order to discuss private roads and acceptance. Bill Stiles, when he was counselor, probably was the most vocal opponent of accepting private subdivision. And so I think there's reasons for us to bring that to a discussion, this one being accepted here. I've never liked accepting private roads as public roads, there's no real public benefit to a dead-end road. Nobody uses it except the residents. It is a cost to the community, so I think that there's reason to look at that. In this particular application here, though, drainage maintenance, Clark hereby agrees to perpetually maintain or cause the associate. That's kind of unusual, Chris. I don't recall seeing something like that where the contractor is left to maintain something after the fact. And is this, am I right that this is unusual?
We changed it a few years back where it's not the contractor, it's the homeowners association. It assumes all responsibility for the detention ponds, the ditches, and the infrastructure. We took that away from the town. We only accepted one a few years back on Fuller Road. That detention pond failed. We agreed to take that back, but it's been our practice for the past few years anyway to have the HOA assume responsibility for the infrastructure of detention ponds. We put a note in that, so if it's catastrophic, where it's a FEMA storm and is a disaster declaration, then we would help assume responsibility by claiming FEMA funds and helping to get those repaired, but that was.
I think that's one more reason for us to review the policy of accepting these subdivision roads, and unless we can utilize, come up with a reason that it's a connecting road, or there's been a preservation for a piece of land to connect with another piece of, property that may be subdivided at a certain point, or a through road, or some benefit. I think we really should review it. So.
Well, I agree with you because we actually, when the previous manager was here, there was discussions over the years of should we put something in writing and just assume we're going to accept the roads, and then have something in writing saying this is the standard we want and this is going to happen. So there's not a guessing game with the developers. They know coming into it, we're going to put all this into it, we're going to put the money into it, we're going to build the infrastructure the way you want it. We expect it to be accepted at the end if we meet all these demands. But I think you're right. I think we really have to have a workshop and a ordinance or a policy in place to solidify that.
Bob,
I think-
sorry.
go ahead.
Go, Bailey. I'll wait.
I personally have a tough time with taking a hard stance on it, and could be more of a discussion outside of this agenda item. But if they are a taxpayer, I feel like it's part of their contribution to the community. I know they understand that when they purchase that home. However, we do have it's a not densely, but it's populated. And is it a conservation subdivision? Cortland Court? It is, right?
Conservation. There's open space.
Yeah.
There is open
don't believe
space.
it's conservation.
There's two soil filters, DEP soil filters, that have been built to DEP standards, inspected by the DEP, and they have signed off several years ago on them. So.
Okay.
And the homeowners association has budgeted the maintenance of them. They've got a landscaper that goes in and cuts. I think he's contracted for 12 times a year.
Yeah.
To keep the growth down, to make sure that they last.
Yeah.
And the assessment on land that's being a public way is assessed at a higher rate, I'm assuming, than private gravel roads within the town. So it seems to me like there is some additional revenue coming to the town for the benefit of having a public way and dollars for the plowing.
I guess I just struggle to understand why that wouldn't be a service we provided when there's multiple homes off the same road. However, I understand, it is an operational roadblock, it is financial roadblock, but however, we are getting more taxpayer dollars from that road because people are paying taxes. It's a double-edged sword. I don't know if it needs to be a whole workshop. I wonder if it's part of our capital plan conversation. I don't know that independently it needs to be discussed for that long unless people feel differently, but I don't know.
I would think that we could, well, especially with what we started our night off with LD 1829, if we're going
Yeah.
to see a lot of changes to development and law, I think a workshop is a great idea, and also like to manage the expectations of the developers as well, right? I mean, I think that
agree.
you've obviously put in a lot of money in investment and, you know, worked with our former town manager to make sure that you were building something that you thought would be kind of a
Last, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also like a no-brainer almost, right? And so I think for us to discuss, you know, Bob's concerns and what all of the ups and downs, and also so that Chris and his team can plan long-term, right? And maybe it's a very short workshop. But I think it would be a good discussion.
I would agree on the workshop, but I mean, the same token, you know, I look at the citizens that bought houses up there, and, you know, I'm not the developer, but I believe that road was paved in 2021. So, I mean, it's been a few years since it's been paved. I drove it this weekend. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like any other development in Cumberland.
Yeah.
So if you're the person buying the house, I mean, it's like a reasonable assumption that you're not going to be stuck thinking about how's the road going to get plowed.
Yeah.
The base coat was in 2021. The finish coat went in last year, and the road has stood. This all transpired during the pandemic, and so it took a little bit longer. And if there was something that was going to go wrong with that road, I think we would have long seen it.
That's exactly where I was going. I mean, the fact that the base coat went on in 21, you know, you're going to find your problems. So, yeah, I mean, there is going to be an increased time to the person who plows that plow route. I mean, you're probably looking at half an hour, you know, at the end of a storm to really do what needs to be done at the end. But, you know, I don't think we need to punish the citizens that live up there. I think, you know, I want to push this forward.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with this one, but workshop for sure, especially, Tig, you mentioned the new statute, like potential development everywhere. Everyone's going to want it to be a private road. Like when you have an HOA, all of those things are kind of expected. Like this is just part of my HOA fee. So I feel like if there's an HOA and a new development, plowing is going to go into that as well. It's a reasonable expectation. And like Bob said, if there's some sort of throughway or purpose to the road that brings a benefit to the town, perhaps that could also be some sort of criteria or something. Because, I mean, you're talking about adding a road here and there, big deal, but think about personnel costs associated with having another plow driver, you know, main PERS, like benefits. Like it's all a snowball effect as we add more of them. They are, and those aren't going to be recovered by the little bit of tax income revenue coming in from that neighborhood. So, yeah.
I will also just warn all of you that I think we have Vining Way coming up, another road next month to be in the queue for acceptance. And so I just want to let you all know that now as well. I think it is, we can get our workshop going, but just a heads up, there will be another one of these coming our way pretty soon. So, okay. Any other questions for, I'm sorry, Wayne?
Bill. William.
Okay, sorry, because I'm just not hearing very well tonight.
Just for reference, the average home sale price, I believe, on that road is over $1 million, and there's, I think, 15. How many properties?
10 lots.
10 lots. So it's a pretty substantial tax contribution. Just throwing that out there. I don't feel like it's,
It's going to cost a lot less to plow that than what's going to come in this winter. This year in tax revenue.
Think about the repaving.
I know.
Any final comments or thoughts or questions? No. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
For being here. Sorry, I don't know where
Thank you.
Wayne came from. Okay, I'd take a motion if there
I'll
is
give
one.
you a motion Sorry, to stop, I have to get working here again. I move to accept Cortland Court. I'll give you a motion to, I move to accept Cortland Court generally described as 1,481 feet in length and 50 feet in width, and described in a deed from W.P. Clark and Sons Home Builders, Inc., period, comma, dated October 27th, 2025, and depicted on Exhibit A of the Orchard Road Subdivision Plan designed by Goral Palmer Engineers, Inc.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay, thank you so
Councilors.
much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your road.
I know.
On
I-
our
I-
road.
I
On
messed up.
our road, on the road. Okay, cool beans. New business. Let's start with Councillor Magoon.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're up next. So I'd sent a note to the council last week. Falmouth had a meeting on adding a sidewalk to part of their portion of Route 88, and it was interesting. I'm not sure, they're looking at it right now of just sort of in the really, really early stages and all, but I came aware of that because I had some constituents reach out about the speed on 88 and how people use that sort of as a highway. Technically, I guess, might have been at some point, but just how it's not safe to walk yourself or with your kids or anything like that, and what we can do to try to get people to go the speed limit there and all. And so Falmouth is looking at, and they've been looking at this apparently for 10, 15, 20 years kind of thing of the sidewalk aspect. But I think that we should be looking at in general, I know we have the radar signs that sort of move around town, but there was also, people have asked about, increased police presence, just sort of parking a cop out there and sort of getting some more revenue from people that are going 45 through the curves, and it's getting darker and all. I think that would be something to look at. So then sort of on that sort of general road safety aspect thing, I'd asked a while ago about potentially adding a blinking crosswalk sign on Main Street in Carroll. There's one right at Greeley Road and Main Street, and you hit that, everybody sees from either side on that curve that somebody's there. But if you're at the crosswalk in Carroll Lane, it's just there's the sign, but nothing to really get people to pay attention to that. And I think if we could add a blinking crosswalk there, and then get people to actually use it, that would be good. I've seen kids almost get hit, heard of kids almost get hit, they're in the crosswalk and somebody's coming around that corner too fast, coming into town.
Carol with a K.
Yes, Carol with a K.
We are looking into that, Councilor Magoon. It's part of the school, new school traffic study they're doing with DOT. We've been working on them for about 3 months and looking at a four-way stop at Greeley and Main Street and the potential of that, and adding some more lighting up there for the crosswalk. So it is on our
Great.
radar.
Awesome to hear. The LCC's next meeting is next week, Wednesday, not this coming Wednesday, but November 5th, at 7 p.m. here in Council Chambers. I would just reiterate what Assistant Manager Bullock mentioned earlier about voting. This Thursday's the last day to vote. Polls are open from 6 to 8 on Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 4th. I know it's not a big national election, but I'd say every election is important, and there's stuff that will impact your life on every ballot. And then I had more of a higher level question for the council on presentations on referendums. You know, I think the chief did a great, very factual, not taking one side or the other of an issue, but sort of what is our policy going forward on having anybody come forward to give a presentation on a specific, referendum? Are we doing that only when, somebody on the council asks? Are we going forward and saying, all right, on every state referendum, we're going to have somebody come and present and try to give an unbiased, just hear the facts on it? Or are we saying that that's not really our place to have those presentations, and that there's a lot of great information out there on whatever referendum, the impacts one way or the other from other organizations, and just sort of where, the rest of the council stands on that? He gets overwhelmed with
Andrew,
response.
I think it's a good question. And, it kind of goes back to, we had the climate carbon tax presentation that came in. I look at we're here for Cumberland and the surrounding communities is my thought. And, I think the chief did a great presentation. But, my opinion is kind of stay out of it and let people make their own decisions.
I don't disagree. I think you're towing a fine line between what our intent and time here should be spent doing. I don't disagree with you. As far as like defining what that is, I don't know if that's a charter or just a general consensus across the council.
I don't know if we need to, if the council had a view of, we're going to let state referendum information, other people, espouse on that. I think we could just do a policy kind of thing at the council level. I don't think we need to go to the charter or anything at that level. But I just would want to make sure that we are not, whether intended or not, being perceived as, putting a thumb on the scale one way or the other on any sort of, ballot measure, especially at the state level. That's not something that we've proposed on our local ballot.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I think the public will let us know very quickly if we're leaning in one way or the other. I think that the presentation tonight was very informative, and that's really what it was. It was informative. I certainly was informative to me to see the difference between the yellow and the red, and I think the explanations helped me make a little bit clearer decision on where I might, but I don't think it was biased one way or the other. I think it was more informative, and I think if our goal is to be informative, we're on safe ground. If we're showing bias, then I think the public is going to let us know very quickly that we're overstepping what we're.
Yeah, I'm not trying to suggest in any way that the chief's was biased. And I agree that it was, pretty much here are the facts, and this is what the law says. This is what the proposed law says. And that's it.
The council has taken a position on a number of issues over the years, though, so it's, trying to think what it was actually called, but one of the first years that I was on the board, I asked the council to take a position on something that was somewhat controversial. It might have been climate change, or it may have been something else. But some of the councilors said we don't want to do this, so we shouldn't be doing this. And at the end of the day, we made a decision to vote, and I think it was a unanimous vote. And I think everything has its place, and certainly we shouldn't be afraid to take a position at the right time and the right things. I certainly am gonna conduct my life in, you know, in a principled manner and stand for what I believe is the, you know, the right thing at the right day, and, you know, we can pick and choose what that might be, or what that's, you know, how that personally affects us, or how what the standing is in the community, and they, you know, the voters will tell us.
Denise.
I'm glad we had the presentation, and I'd want more like them, especially since I can Google all I want, but we had Chief Rumsey here talking about it in the context of our own community and how it is used, which I can't get that from Google, and neither can anyone watching at home. And me emailing for some information wouldn't help anyone else as well, because I'm not going to disseminate that information far and wide. Ultimately, it's up to the chair to make the agenda. Yeah? Is that correct? So if someone brings up something during new business, as long as it's not insane, or even if it is, it can make its way onto the agenda. So there's already discretion there happening. It's, again, if someone starts rambling off on some obviously biased spiel, again, the chair or whoever would probably ask them to rein it in. I feel like this is solvable just by humans talking to each other. And plenty of times, people have been on this dais, like, proselytizing their ideas. Like, we are not agnostic. Like, we keep it nonpartisan, but there are definitely opinions, and people make them known. So I think we're all capable of, you know, keeping it on the right path and keeping it informative. So that's where I'm at with it. It got really hot in here.
It is really warm.
Wait a minute, it'll change.
I would like to just think about it a little bit more, because I totally see your point, because I think also sometimes you might choose to do a presentation on one thing, but we didn't choose to do a presentation on the other, right? And there just so happens that there are two very highly controversial topics on the ballot this time around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is it then biased because we didn't do a presentation on the other one, right? Like, I don't know. I'd love to think it over a little bit more.
That's more where I'm coming from, of, you know, if,
Promoting equity.
yeah, we should do either, I think, you know, none or all kind of thing, so we're not perceived as highlighting and saying, hey, you know, and not another kind of thing. And, you know, it's, in some way, it's tough to bring this up right now because the chief did a good job of just being like, all right, you know, this is the law, this is the proposed, and not getting at all. So it was a very good presentation. And, you know, I think that the fact that we had it on one and not another, you know, could be seen by some as, well, why did you promote that one and not something else? You know, that's more of where I'm coming from, as opposed to, you know, anything with the presentation tonight. So.
I think it's a good question to ask, for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it promotion, though, because we also are not promoting a climate tax or promoting anything else that any other workshop person or, you know, speech giver talks to us about. So it's, I don't know. I guess it depends on how you frame it, but I wouldn't call this an endorsement or a promotion one way or the other. It just depends on the context.
I think let's all digest a little bit, and for now we have consensus around maybe just taking a look at and thoughtfully discussing things that feel like they are reasonably within our purview as town business, right? Bob always says we're here to do the business of the town, which is something I always take pretty seriously, and I think as these things come up, if, you know, we can look at them and continue to look at them on a case-by-case basis, and if people feel comfortable having them on the agenda, then we can, and if not, then we can not put them on the agenda. But I think the clear communication is the big thing that we're after, right? So,
That's it for me for new business.
That's it for you?
Yep.
Okay, great. Bailey Douglas.
Thank you for that boisterous conversation there, Andrew. I think the only thing for me is the Coastal Waters Commission meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. here at Town Hall. And that is it for me.
Excellent. Counselor Vale?
I have two things tonight. One is to remind everybody that we have a workshop coming up on housing, and I'd like to remind people that there was two things that I want to talk about. One is the potential conversion or reuse of the Drown Road facility into a multi-use facility, and the other one is a affordable housing project down on Stiles Way. And before we have that workshop, I will going to get together with the town manager. We're going to try to send some materials out to kind of flesh out what it is that I'm asking the council to specifically look at, or just some options that we're going to look at. So the other thing that I have is it's a little bit different. I think that Matt followed up with a couple of emails later today. My wife and I have had a number of conversations over the last couple of days, and one of which is, what is the impact of the loss of SNAP benefits to our community? And so, you know, it's a conversation when at home, she finally said, "What are you going to do about it?" You know, and so, you know, all right, what am I going to do about it? Because that was what the conversation led to. What am I going to do? So I called Chris first thing this morning, and I said, I'm curious to how many people are receiving SNAP benefits in our town, and what is that impact of the loss of that finance? So we can all talk about the political mores of the day, and you know, who's at fault for not solving the problems in Washington. But so my answer to my wife is a check. If 180 of us write a check for $100 to the food pantry, we will have taken care of that problem for the SNAP benefits for 1 month. And hopefully the state, the federal government will get their act together. I've asked Whitney to, in the Crown Crier on Thursday, to follow up with that request and make that known that, you know, if 180 people of us choose to chip in, we can make sure that people don't go hungry. This is a wealthy community, and this is an easy thing for us to, this is not a heavy lift, if you will. We talk about, you know, where we stand and you know, what we want to do and how we're remembered or recognized. I have a problem taking money from the town, and I don't say this because I want recognition. It's more of a fact that I just have a problem with it. But I give my monthly, quarterly stipend that the town gives me back to the food pantry. So it's the little things that we do that make a difference in this country and its world. And so if we show that, you know, to this community and then to the larger community that, you know, we as citizens are going to solve the problem ourselves, we can expect our elected representatives to do likewise. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Bob.
Making me go after Bob every time, I swear.
No, sometimes I go that way.
I'm kidding.
Sometimes he has to go
Bob's
after
so
you.
heartfelt and amazing. Website, looking great. I'm digging it. I know we don't have an agenda yet, probably for TRICOM meeting. I wanted to see if the school funding formula is going to be an item on that agenda, and if not, can we put it on it to get some discussion around it?
We do have an agenda for the TRICOM meeting. That is not on it. I don't know. When did we publish it?
I don't see it on the website, so that's why I'm
No,
wondering.
or sorry, Brenda finalized it this morning. I can reach out to the other two leaders. I mean, yeah, and I'll tell you what's on the agenda. We have a pretty robust agenda already. Let's talk offline. Let's see what we
Okay.
can do.
I figured we've talked about it enough to where I think it's time to open it up and see what the others are feeling about it as well, and if they're interested.
Question, joint standing,
Yes, it's being scheduled. Matt and I are meeting on it tomorrow.
wouldn't that be a more conducive environment for that conversation, since it doesn't necessarily, I mean, it does involve the school, but it seems like that needs to be a conversation between us and North Yarmouth. I know that's where the initial conversations began, but that's another point at which that could come up.
Maybe, I thought, I remember someone saying something about how it's like equal 3 pieces for that to take place.
I sent the statute around. It was a old memo from 2022 that I earthed up after our last meeting and sent it around.
Oh, yeah, pay as you teach.
It was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, got it. I remember.
uh,
Yeah,
so-
wherever it's just whatever. I don't know when joint standing meets, and just on the radar if we're ready to move forward and start talking to our colleagues.
I would say let's start with joint standing also, and I will tell you what's on the agenda for the meeting next week.
Good deal.
But just in the spirit of not also blindsiding and bulldozing, let's start with joint standing with North Yarmouth and then go from there.
Should we just talk about it as a council the next meeting? I mean, because I'm thinking about myself and joint standing. I mean, I don't want to be delivering a message unless I have the rest of you folks kind of behind me, so to say. I mean, it's not delivering the message, it's just,
What is council consensus?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that to take this on, there's going to need to be a counselor who's sort of raising their hand and is going to be the point person on it, because it's going to be there's a lot that goes into this. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of, so if there is someone or 2 people, almost ideally, that have interest in kind of taking that on, it could be that you go to joint standing as well and kind of put your hand up and say, this is something I'm willing to start to engage in, or start the conversations with, and kind of go from there. I don't know if Denise, you are that. You may be that person. You may not be that person.
It depends on what all the 5 million steps are, and if a lot of that is mostly like town attorney work and town manager, like people on the payroll whose job it is to do those types of things. It depends. What's the scope of work, and what is the responsibility of a counselor in that situation to do like the line items? So really just
Why
need to
don't we
understand more.
review the statute is our next step, and then we can discuss at our next meeting,
Sounds good.
what those next steps are. In the meantime, we will get the joint standing committee meeting scheduled and also communicate to North Yarmouth that we would like to at least look into this, and we're exploring it.
Yeah.
Bob, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh. Denise, would you be open to meeting maybe me, you, and Matt, and just trying to understand the scope? Because it's something I'm interested in pursuing and trying to understand more about it. I had talked to Tig about it at length kind of after this first came out and trying to understand and decipher some of it, but it might be a good exercise just for Matt to walk us through what that might look like.
Sure.
I'll email him tomorrow.
Super.
That's all I have.
All right, I guess I'm between us and adjournment, so I'll make it as quick as I can. Bob, I'll match your $100, so.
All right, only
79
178 to go.
Yeah, or something like that, yeah. I took advantage of the bulky waste drop-off event, and I'll just say it was well-organized, well-run. So hats off to Public Works and town staff and Casella for all their efforts. West Cumberland meeting, November 5th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the West Cumberland Community Hall. And then lastly, just as I drove through the town over the weekend, I drove by Twin Brooks and said, wow, that looks really good, and drove by the West Cumberland Field and said, wow, that looks really good. So, I mean, you know, we've had a dry summer, or the second half of a summer, and, you know, it was really dry. The first half was really wet. But, you know, obviously a lot of people put a lot of hard work into that, and I think sometimes we take it for granted. And so just to the people that made all that happen, thank you. And on that, I'm out.
Awesome. I have a couple of things. So we'll start, so next Thursday from 6 to 8, we are hosting here the Tri-Community meeting. So the items that we have on the agenda, we'll start with obviously our call to order. We'll do a public discussion of 3 minutes per person. Then each of the bodies will do a high-level update about what's going on in their town. Then we are going to do an overview, each body, of community service and looking specifically at the SNAP impacts from the federal shutdown. And so there are things that, you know, the MSAD, or MSAD 51 does with like free lunch and free breakfast and lunch programs. They have other services as well. North Yarmouth has some services. We have shared services. So just really being thoughtful and disseminating out to, you know, anyone who's in the listening in what is already in place, and also if there are any opportunities to, I don't know, maybe we could do a joint clothing drive or winter, you know, maybe there's something we could all do together and kind of communicate out together. That would be a good opportunity to just kind of, one, understand the lay of the land, where the gaps are, and then we could, you know, build a plan if we wanted to address them as a unified group. After that, we're going to look at everyone's favorite topic, LD 1829. Obviously, with everything we looked at today, there's going to be potentially big implications for enrollment, right? And so the school doesn't always, they don't hear about things like, I mean, they sort of vaguely know about 1829, but they don't know to be looking out for, they don't know the impact, right? So we're going to talk about that from a long-term planning perspective and about right sizing. They are going to come and talk with us about an enrollment study that they're hoping to do next year. And then we'll end up with finish off with an update of the One Campus project. I expect maybe something also on some of the DOT studies that are happening around the possible four-way stop and kind of all of that, maybe a little bit of just a general update. So that is, next Thursday at 6 here in council chambers. Last week we did one of our first outreach sessions for the comp plan. We had about 40 people or so, all ages, show up. We had really cool activities. They were a combination of people talking, but also kind of interactive activities that allowed us to capture data points. So things like, we talked a little bit tonight about, you talked about high crash, safety pedestrian things, right? So there was there was a huge map of kind of town roads, and people could go and put stickies where they were, there was like a near miss, right? Or where they feel unsafe in town. And so you're having dialogue there, but you're also being able to collect these teeny tiny little data points so that the comp plan actually has that, you know, more quantitative data as well. So it was a really, really great and well-run evening. We had a whole bunch of people, different age ranges, different parts of town. It was awesome, and I just really want to just say well done to that committee for just all of the hard work. Bob, is there anything you wanted to add on that? No, okay. Everyone should go vote.
I have a question for you, Tig.
Yeah.
At the last TRICOM meeting, it, I mean, I don't want to say it was sad, because it kind of was sad, but like, the school not being aware of like how many permits were churning out and this and that. And then it was brought up that the LCC sends that out in like their minutes, like they have solar permits, building permits, all that, and the planning board probably also, or the town has a list. Are we communicating with them now better on that front?
So
Are they getting automatically forwarded emails?
So that is something as part, we talked about that last night. We had one of the goals is to and what we want to talk about is actually formalizing some kind of process that outlives all of us, right? Because
Yeah.
it can be that I remember to send something on 1829 to Leanne, but, you know, we're elected officials. We're not here forever, right? Thank God for the public.
That's your Bob. I'm kidding.
So what can we do to formalize some kind of process so that, like, the school is, you know, CC'd and it's not just a, hey, you should just go to the planning board agenda and see what's going, right? Like, we need to do it in a way that's more thoughtful and, yeah, outlives all of us, so.
Good deal.
Thank you for the follow-up question. Anything else from anybody? Hey, hot to trot? To adjourn? Motion?
So move.
All right, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to everyone who came out tonight.